In 3, 2, 1, action.
Good evening. Today is Tuesday, January 17th, and welcome to the HHCSD Board of Education meeting. The board has just returned from executive session, and we're going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as stated? Can I have a second? All in favor? All right, we are going to start tonight with some awesome recognition.
I'd like to invite up Tom Baker, our athletic director. He is here with a number of other really important people to help us recognize Amaya Davis. The board and those watching at home and those who are here may know of Amaya. She came with her coach and the rest of her team a couple months ago to be recognized as they won the Class B state volleyball tournament. And the accolades continued even after the tournament. So Mr. Baker is here to share some really, really good news and a first for our school district.
Yes, so thank you for having us here tonight. Our guest of honor is going to stay here and just take it all in here, and I'd like to welcome her. Her parents are here and her sister Shanti. And I know her brother would be here, and he's the first one that cheers for her spikes and her kills, but he's at his basketball game across town in Peekskill. So I'd like to welcome all the Davis family. After a very magical year that we finished up at Glens Falls with a state title, as Mr. Hockhardt said, our accolades kept coming in, and a few weeks ago she was named the Low HUD Player of the Year, which was a great accolade. But then I got this email last week at 8 a.m. in the morning and called coach immediately and said, "Did you get this email?" She said no, and I said, "Amaya just got named New York State Gatorade Player of the Year." And if you let that sink in, there are hundreds, maybe thousands of volleyball players across the state. You got recognized as the best. And only 50 student athletes in the entire country get this award. So she is the New York State Gatorade Athlete of the Year. And as Mr. Hockhardt said, it's a first for HHCSD. We've had some runner-ups before. We've had finalists for the Wendy's Heisman High School Award years ago, but a New York State Gatorade Player of the Year. And Amaya, I couldn't be more proud of you. Your growth as a student leader and ambassador of the sport, and seeing you, and I still remember the day as a young 8th grader testing as an advanced placement process and trying to get through that test, and you made it, you did it. And now looking at you and just seeing you mature and blossom into this wonderful leader and ending and culminating with a state title, you all deserved it, and your leadership and your friends, and some of them are here tonight. And it was just a wonderful accomplishment. So I know Coach is going to say something too, but I just want to congratulate you and welcome you in front of the board as well. But I'll let Coach speak too.
I was really thankful that we're working on our frequent flyer miles here. So this is always fun for us, and thanks again for having us. And she's a special girl. For me, it's not just a special award for all of her percentages and her consistency. And as my daughter and I were speaking with Coach Bernalini about what she is as a leader, a team member, a big sister, as a younger sister to her sister Shanti. Is like, I'm so proud of her. Shanti played for us, was a Final Four in 2019. And if you don't have a big sister who started out late, as you recall, I used to make fun of you because you were a little, behind on the court. You stick with it, you persevere, you're going to do well. And who's the little one that's hanging out with you all the time? Oh, that's my baby sister. Well, bring her and your brother, let them come cheer. And before you know it, you're following in her footsteps. And with that comes, more personal training as well from Guy Massey, who's another great coach that you work out with, your parents supporting you, taking you places, the funding, so you can achieve your goals, just like they did for Shanti, and now no pressure with Anthony too, of course, too. But it takes the village, as we always say. And for my coaching staff and behalf of the teammates, we're beyond proud of you. Your awards exceed any volleyball player I've ever had. And as Coach mentioned, Mr. Baker mentioned, we have had finalists for this. It's a very extensive forms, I should say, and phone calls and emails. I did get that email. I'm sorry, I checked it late, but it was fun getting the message from Mr. Baker. And Liz videotaping my phone call to you and you screaming, and she was so worried that she screamed too loud because there were other classes in process and progress. And I was like, I'm gonna scream louder, let me know, joyful, joyful. So, you know, it's a celebration of the community effort, as you know, and I know that we expect great things from you, and it doesn't have to be volleyball oriented. Although you are going to Shepherd University in Western Virginia, correct? To pursue also her music and possibly nursing, as mom is a nurse, we hope. And that doesn't surprise me with your personality. And again, what do we ask of our student athletes and all our students? Be a leader in what you do and do it really well. So on behalf of all of us, we love you. So proud of you.
Want to thank the Board of Ed for allowing us to bring Maya here and share our accomplishments with all of you. Like I said, we're proud of you, and it's nice to be here and celebrate the great things. So you got great things coming ahead of you. So congratulations, Maya. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. And Amaya, you come back anytime. It's wonderful to hear about what a leader you are and how amazing you are outside of volleyball. That's incredible, because if anybody here has gotten a chance to watch Amaya play, there would be no question as to how she achieved this great success. You're absolutely incredible. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
And we fail her, so she has to stay in the.
Hello. All right. So now we're going to move on to our audience comments on non-agenda items. We have people signed up for one. Okay, so this evening I'm going to read our public comment introduction for everyone in the audience. Because we feel community engagement is important, the Hendrick-Hudson Board of Education welcomes public comment during this portion of the meeting. Please note that the public comment period is not designed to be a discussion. The board is here to listen. Please do not expect the board to respond to your concerns and questions this evening. This is because the board trustees and the superintendent take your comments seriously, and we want to have sufficient time to thoughtfully process your comments, to research the issues if need be. To maintain an orderly meeting, the board has allotted 15 minutes for the public comment period, which may be extended by board consensus. Each speaker should sign in, which everyone has already done that. When called, please step up to the podium and begin by stating your name and your affiliation. Letters, petitions, and other written materials should be handed to the district clerk. All comments must be directed to the board. Each speaker is permitted 3 minutes. The board may limit repetitive comments in order to give time to participants wishing to speak on varied topics. Although we do take personnel concerns and individual student matters very seriously, the board is not permitted to address these in open session as per state and federal laws. We ask that you would use the appropriate administrative channels for these. The board expects comments to be made without interference from the audience and in a civil manner. Please remember, if you prefer not to participate in public comment portion of the meeting, written comments to the board are also accepted. So who's our first speaker?
First speaker is Lisa Rosen.
Good evening. My name is Elisa Rosen, and I am president of the Hendrick-Hudson Education Association. I represent Hendrick-Hudson's 250 teachers and related services staff, the district's largest group of professional educators. I'm here tonight to clear up the conversations I have heard regarding the survey that the HHCA conducted to gain information from elementary teachers regarding the reorganization of elementary schools to grade level banding, which was shared with the trustees. As I mentioned in my letter to the trustees, the purpose of the information was to add the observations and viewpoint of professional educators to the reactions from stakeholders that the Board of Education has been gathering publicly, even though the restructuring was only 3 months old. The HHCA polls the membership in this manner whenever we need to gather information to confirm our viewpoint. The HHCA members have had many years of education and experience in the field of education and many years in the classroom with your children. We care so much about our students, we call them our kids. We lose sleep thinking of how to make our classrooms a better place for our kids, academically, emotionally, and socially. We take our work with our kids very seriously, and as I mentioned in another communication, it is important to the HHEA members that the board shows our members that they are valued and that they are heard. 34 elementary HHEA members participated in this survey. Some chose not to because they felt that it was premature to share their viewpoints after only 3 months. Overall, the trend was educators felt that this reorganization had a positive effect on their students. Feedback included, students get to know their peers before middle school, equity, the same amount of students, same workbook, same experiences, same support staff. The whole grade level staff is able to collaborate together. Ease of change of program. A student will not have to move to another building to change programs. Support staff is able to focus on the needs of 2 grade levels rather than 6. We are working on improving pull-out schedules in view of the position that was cut that created some challenges. We are continuing to work on scheduling so that teachers can have time to collaborate. We are continuing to work on ways to get all of the students in the grade together. Since this is only 4.5 months old, members of the HHEA continue to work with administrators where needed. The HHEA believes that when educators, administrators, and the Board of Education work together, there is no limit to what can be accomplished. We see many positives each day and look forward to working together to show even more improvements that will benefit our students. For the record, I have shared the questions and the results of the survey with Carmen, our district clerk. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Carmen, that's all that's signed up for that section. Thank you. All right, now we're going to move on to the consent agenda, and I have a motion to approve the consent agenda. If no one has anything to pull. Second, all in favor? Aye. Right, I know that we have. Gotta get there. Yeah, we have a donation, right? I think I need that. Great. The Hendrick Hudson Community Education Foundation has made a donation of $385.95 for the purchase of items relating to the Power of Poetry Outdoors program. Thank you, that's awesome. Can I have a motion to approve the donation? Motion. Second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Great. All right, now we're going to move on to our superintendent's report.
Got 2 updates, follow-up items from previous discussions. I'll have Margaret start with pre-K. We talked over the last number of meetings, and particularly around this time last year, around pre-K funding coming to the state, and was asked of Margaret to put together a budget of current and actual, and there's a lot of information on this slide that she'll walk everyone through.
Before I start, I was asked a couple of questions at the last board meeting to follow up on. There was a question about attendance. We had some kids transfer out and some kids transfer in. The state reported back to us that they're billed monthly based on attendance. At the end of the program, they do take attendance from both schools. But they felt that there is no penalty attached to a couple of days. In both cases, a student left on a Friday, a new student started on a Monday in one case. In the second case, a student left right before Christmas. The new student started January 3rd when we came back. So there was no lapse, just to get back to you. We also asked a question about the geographical region for collaboration. There is no limit to that except what is rational and reasonable for parents to get to. So if and when we put out another RFP for 23-24, anyone who sees that RFP is welcome to respond to it. They then, our responsibility is to make sure they match all of the requirements. So that's an extensive review of what they send us. And then it depends on if a parent is willing to drive to that location. So just as we did with this year, with an in-district and an out-of-district program, parents had a choice to make, and some people opted for the collaborator, and other people opted for district. Other people said, I'll go wherever there's an opening. So it will depend. I mean, we could collaborate with someone in Peekskill and they then might not have a family who would want to drive to that location. So that's a coming process. And the last thing I want to say before we look at this is we were informed Friday that the state is opening round 2 of what they call an expansion grant. So they have about $11 million on the table. It's a competitive grant, so we will be in the mix with, I'm sure, a whole lot of other school districts. And the proposal from our end is due on February 17th. If we were to be successful, the amount of funding per seat increases from 5,400 to 10,000. So it's not an inconsiderable amount. Per student, per seat. So Lisa, myself, Cindy Kramer, and likely the 2 pre-K teachers will collaborate over the coming days and weeks to put our proposal together and throw our hat in the ring. So we'll see what happens. Oh, I don't have that information yet, but it's just the beginning of the process. I will keep you updated as we go along. Okay, and then the chart. So the chart that we have in front of us is the proposal for 23-24. And what you see there on the left are the employees, the staff members who are currently in the program and teaching and supporting. On the right are the teachers and the support staff that were hired to replace those folks when they moved out of their position and into UPK. So you see the cost of those 2 teachers, 2 TAs on both sides. Next year consumables is about $10,000. And you'll see that it's hard for me to read all the time here. The total in that new higher side, less the reimbursement for the state next year, they also will allow us to go to 18 students up from 17. So the reimbursement is slightly more. And then the bottom line is the cost for the program and per student, what the cost is as well. Questions?
So did you get follow-up? Was the increase in funds allocated to pay for next year? Was it both more seats and more money per seat, or you didn't?
Well, we don't know the exact amount yet. The first thing I did was I found Governor Hochul's press release just to confirm that her intention is seats, not more money. So it's very nice to put more money in the pot. And I understand the concern is access. So I appreciate that and I applaud it. But as Joe has said many times, living where we live, the cost of educating students is far more than it is upstate. And so the superintendents in the lower Hudson region, and I believe Long Island as well, continue to advocate for that cost being increased. Right now, the intention is that there are more seats provided in 23-24. So that's what the additional funding will cover.
So this grant that we look to receive could maybe offset that.
Possibly. This was it's part 2 of a larger expansion grant that went out, and it usually goes to the bigger cities. So Buffalo, Syracuse, Yonkers get the bigger hit because they have the most need. And if you look at the list of cities, I actually think Peekskill also received additional funding in the first round. So in the second round, we'll see what happens. Well, you know, as I said, it's competitive. We will put together the best application that we can and make the case for what we think we can do. In enhance, and that's what they're looking for. You ran a program in 22-23 and you said, aha, here are some ideas for 23-24. Put that on paper and share it with us.
And do you know teacher 3 and teacher 4, what step were they hired?
I don't know off the top of my head, remember what I know who they are, but I did look to see what step.
Remind me of our timeline. Need us to make a decision by.
The parents that are watching would say right now, please. I'm sure all of you are aware, especially those of you with young children, that people right now are trying to get a spot in a local pre-K. The local pre-Ks are looking to see how many students, you know, if we're not doing it, they will expect more back. If we are doing it, they can prepare themselves for what enrollment might look like. So I would say on average, we're receiving right now probably anywhere from 5 to 6 phone calls or emails a day. With, you know, when will we know? And I invited all of them up to this morning to watch the board meeting tonight, to continue to look at the website and to continue to feel free to reach out to us by email or by telephone.
How long is the RFP process?
You can make it as long as you want. Last time we did it, it was over the summer, so we asked for a quick turnaround, and I think we did, Carmen, 2 weeks, I think, I remember. We can make it 2 weeks, we can make it a month.
Is there any harm to starting the RFP now?
I would say no. And we have a document that we would basically just need to tweak a bit with the attorneys and then get it out the door.
I don't know how the rest of the board feels. So I do think that everyone has to start to kind of weigh in on what direction we're leading here. I think it's only fair to our community members and the local preschools that we start to formulate direction. So in my opinion, I would start the RFP process.
I have a question about that.
Yes.
So, right, can we start the RFP process without formally moving forward?
The RFP doesn't guarantee anything. It invites interested parties to show us what their program might look like.
So that seems like a next logical step. I agree, Alexis.
Is there any way I could see a budget to actual for the pre-K program? Because I think this is more than we originally anticipated for the district cost,
Actual costs are here.
right? Is that, but where's the budget? What is the original thing?
The actual cost.
Right, the actual cost. So where's the original budget that we wanted us? Because there was something, I feel like this number that is the district cost is much more than we originally. planned.
Well, the 60 was, so last, are you talking last year's presentation?
Yeah,
I think last year's presentation was a budget neutral cost outside of a one-time $60,000 expense.
that's right. So this is significantly more than
Yeah.
originally anticipated. Right, so that's what I'm looking for.
The 60,000, I think, was equipment that we bought, and now we haven't.
Right,
Yeah, now we have
can
it.
assume we have like a budget versus actual, right? We budgeted for pre-K and these are just our actuals.
Well, actually, if you remember, in the last presentation that I made, I was showing 2 step 1 teachers because they never told me that they already had hired the 2 teachers for UPK. So I was showing in my last one, and the difference is about $160,000.
I just, I think before we make a decision, we should just know we're getting into how much it's actually costing. Because I mean, obviously, we're getting a lot of benefit from the pre-K, the community's getting benefit from it. We just need to go in with eyes wide open. And I think when we make a budget for this coming year, it should be more accurate. We're way under.
So,
Right?
do you want to?
I remember the presentation, your way.
On the left-hand side, these are the staffing position, in the position now rolled over if they continue next week. It's high because they're veteran staff. Those teacher 1 and teacher 2 brought their TAs with them. More veteran staff, the more salary benefits, so on and so forth. We had to replace them because they left a vacant position in their elementary school. And those are the 4 positions on the right. So it's a matter of what funding source we use to pay them. So while the 194 certainly isn't covering the staff in the classrooms on the left, the 194 covers all but 134 of the replacement folks. So had we hired just less veteran staff, we would have been closer to using more of the grant to cover the cost. So what happens is they swap silos.
So when
So-
we talk about the cost, right, we're talking about the left.
Right, so what is the net cost of
Right.
what, that's why I'm, this is why when I first saw this, it was a bit confusing to me. It was like, what's our net cost for pre-K?
Yeah,
So
that's the
Pretty
cost.
the
straightforward.
anticipated cost on the left is $499,307.
Right, and district out of pocket is two thirties, right?
Yeah.
So that's 230 something more than we
Oh.
originally planned.
No.
No, it's actually, no,
Or is
that-
it net?
we know,
Do we-
hang on a second. They used the wrong presentation for this. If you look at what's in front of us, you should not have, what do you have on the bottom of your left side? You should have 305.
Yeah, I have 3 of them.
But the one on, what does it say on the screen?
Oh,
Three
yeah.
of five.
So where did you see?
Oh, because I don't have my glasses.
Yeah, that's.
It's really, really small. So I'm trying to read it as best I can. It's an eye chart. So 305.
305 on the left.
So 305, so we're 305 more than we originally anticipated.
And I think it's important because, we hear UPK and we think that it's free and that all children should get it. It's not free, right? I mean, we're getting a portion of funding, which is fantastic, but there is an investment from the district and whether we grow it or what have you. And the fact that we don't know how much funding we're gonna get, we really do have to be committed or not to putting funds and allocating it there.
I think when we compare to last year's budget too, there's a few points worth noting. In this budget, we get $10,800 additional dollars because they're funding 36 seats, not 34. Last year was 34 seats. So the cost of us for last year would be whatever the difference in cost to the employee is with less that amount. Here, right? Because they didn't make the same this year as we were going to check next year with their step or their 2% increase or whatever. But we also didn't receive $1,800 that's represented here because we only have 34 seats, not 36. And last year, I think we presented as the TAs as being no additional cost, but we hired a bunch this year, so we couldn't borrow them from the budget because we still replaced them, which was not the way that we understood it when it was voted on as a net neutral. I think that's to answer some of your questions where the.
I thought we were supposed to be funded. I thought they increased it to 54, didn't they? Wasn't there was an increase from
5,400 per seat.
per seat up, that was like 50 seats that they went after, didn't it?
Oh, we could have taken more children. We just
We
didn't
just
have
didn't
any
have
place to
them.
put them, right?
Okay, got
We
it.
only had one collaborator and they could only take X amount of seats.
Okay,
So,
and we
yes,
have the two classes of 17.
correct.
And then I.
Okay.
You sure?
Yeah.
So I have a question about that $11 million on that, the grant. So that's 1,100 seats, right? Divided 2,000. How many in-house pre-K seats are there in New York State?
I have no idea.
I think it'd be important to get an idea what our likelihood of winning is, especially if it's going to go to city districts predominantly, whether
Well, it
that's.
can't go to anybody who already was allocated in the first round. So they're done, they're off the table.
So
Well, there's also a big question. Is this a perpetual funding or is this a one?
So they do say that if you are granted and it's $10,000 per student, that is your reimbursement.
So that's perpetual.
Yes, it's
So it's
not,
going
oh,
forward.
1 year now, too bad.
Good, good, okay.
Exactly.
So I get it. That's really good.
yeah, because then you're neutral, right? So then the next question that I have is, when they do to determine the number of seats, that $11 million, is that in addition? Because if we're already going to get 5,400, then really that means that it would be funding an additional 4,000 and change, which really opens it up to almost 2,300 or 2,400 additional seats that they're gonna, because if they're funding you 10,000 and then the money you get goes away, then there's only 1,100 new
No,
seats in
they
all the
took
state.
you to 10,000, so they're giving you 46 more.
So then there's 2,300
expansion.
seats or whatever the number is, I don't remember it, but so there's 2,300 seats in the state that will become available for this bonus. I think it's important to know what our, what our chances are. If there's,
Who are we in?
yeah,
next?
are there 10,000 kids in New York State? that
And they
are-
may,
seats
they
are-
may or may not, I can certainly ask, so they always, when there's a competitive grant process, there's always a window open for questions. I could certainly ask that, they could probably tell you when the window closes, how many districts apply competitively, so.
And then is the grant also only for in-house UPK seats?
No,
Or it will also be for collaborator
Yes.
seats? Oh, so I think that's important because that also reduces our likelihood of being granted one of those seats, because that means there's only 2,300 seats of every single UPK kid, whether they go to a collaborator or not. So that means we're also gonna be competing against a collaborator.
I don't know that they necessarily though are looking at the number of seats that they would be giving you as opposed to just the district proposals that they put forward.
Yeah, but I'm saying there's only 20, if they're paying the delta,
Mhm.
right, there's only 2,300 seats that you can get when you take $4,600 or whatever and divide it into 11.
Yeah, we should not be, we should be making a decision. Paying the
Based
full
on
amount.
this.
Something that's not like, I was trying to figure out what our likelihood of getting.
If a grant comes through, then that's great, but
I have a
it
feeling
is
that it's-
a nice process to go through, but we may be, fighting an uphill battle based on our demographics or whatnot.
I agree, it should be based on this money, and if we are lucky enough to be part of that, good for us.
I just wanted to ask, I mean, I really think that UPK is an extremely important program. But last year I asked if we had just gone with collaborators and not done it in-house, would it have been this costly to the district?
Well, no, because we wouldn't have staffed it, it would have been outside, but now if you think about what we ended up with only one potential collaborator, it would.
We didn't go outside the district.
No,
for
we did not go
collaborators.
outside. And again, I'm happy to do that. I just don't know how realistic it is to expect a parent, because there's no transportation, to drive their student to
Say
wherever.
Peekskill. We have houses in
We do
the
have
school
houses
district that are
in
in Peekskill.
what we would consider the southern, well, is it southern portion of Peekskill? Remember that Peekskill gets a lot of money, and they were part of round one. So they are probably fully subscribed with their collaborators.
Yeah.
There's also another daycare opening in Peekskill.
Yeah.
So
We
I
can try, Stephanie, absolutely. I think the problem that we faced last year was that the requirements for you to be a collaborator by the state are pretty stiff, and they should be. So.
I do remember when I asked last year, though, I was told that we couldn't go outside of the district.
No, you can go outside the district. You can't take students from outside the district. 'Cause I already had a Lakeland parent ask me, and I said, no, you can't do that.
And I hear what Stephanie's saying, if we are either a little more aggressive or we find some different collaborators, we can educate more of our pre-K students, even though they may be going to a program outside the district. It would be more cost effective, more bodies, more children having a 4-year-old experience, and less out of pocket on our end. Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, the next update is Ilio is with us to discuss some potential transportation initiatives. We've been having conversations at the board table and internally about what some recommendations might be to change the rider and the family experience. And so she's going to get into some proposals that might be palatable for the rest of this school year or to consider for next year.
Good evening, everyone. So I basically tried to put together a timeline. Enrique and I worked on this together. And so we just want to make sure that everybody is familiar as to, how we got to where we are. Okay, so this started probably, I don't know, probably almost 2 years ago. The superintendent came to me, we hired a collaborator, a contractor who is Larry Lee Fiber from Fiber Fundamentals. With a plan to develop new routes had the district gone to grade banding to the Princeton plan. The criteria was that we didn't want to have to change bell times. We didn't want to add any additional buses. And we needed to kind of keep ride times to 40 minutes or less. Right, so after working with the collaborator, rough time through the first time, it was a difficult task to meet. The collaborator did tell us that for the routes to work, that we needed to, it says that we had to eliminate 2 routes. What happened was that because we had low ridership on a few of the buses in the middle school level, one bus had 18 kids, another bus only had 20 kids. I was able to combine those 2 routes, and then that freed up 2 drivers for me to be able to start picking up children at this end of the district to get them to Furnace Woods for the 8:05, 8:20, bell time. All right, we did add some vans to the elementary routes. Those, I've always used vans because we do have some of our special ed kids that in their IEP, they're required to be on vans. I have extra seats in those, that I was able to, add some of our other kids onto those vans. So there was no additional cost for the vans. So that's why it's not, when we went to the financial part of it, you don't see that those are added. When we did the routes, kind of an industry standard is to, the routing program, you set the speed at which you want, you want the bus to travel on. Okay, so the industry standard is like 25 miles per hour. By increasing it slightly to 30, which still keeps the bus, moving, at, within the legal limits, it obviously does, reduce the ride times on paper. Okay, and then we also did reduce bus stops. It's easier to stop at one stop and pick up 10 kids than to stop 5 times and pick up 2 kids at each stop, because each stop takes time. The routing program also allots you a certain number of seconds per student to load. So the less times we have to stop, then that's, reduces also the amount of minutes that the ride takes. Okay. So as we go on, yes, we know that there was overcrowding on middle school routes. So what I've done is that, I've done some revisions this year with middle school routes, and some of them, we finished up, actually, some of the kids started today going back to a bus that I had moved kids off of one bus, put them on another bus, and that didn't work. What happens in this district is that I have some buses, which are conventional buses, which are 66 passenger, and then I have my pushers, which are 72 passengers. So moving kids around isn't always so easy unless I'm moving them from the same size bus. Right? So any buses that had more than 60 kids on it for the middle school, I did try to revise those where possible and bring those numbers down into the 50s. And yes, I understand, middle school kids are bigger. It's not like putting elementary kids on, their backpacks are bigger, they're carrying instruments, they're carrying sports equipment. I will remind everybody that they're not supposed to, but they do. All right. Clearly it says in all the district policies about, you can carry a flute, you can carry a violin, anything bigger than that. You need to get transported by your parent to school, and, the big baseball bags, lacrosse bags, things like that are not supposed to be on buses either. All right, so by not doing those things, it really would make more space on the bus too. And I understand it's an inconvenience for parents, but, we have lockers in school, and, we need to start to, pack our stuff in there. Okay, we're continuing to hire staff, but I will tell you, people are kicking the doors in for jobs. And when they come to me, they're not certified to drive, so now I have to get them trained, which you guys approved at the last board meeting to collaborate with Carmel schools, because we also have, things put in front of us by the federal motor carriers, which we are governed by, and they all have to go through what's called now entry-level driver training, which is 30 hours of classroom instruction, as well as the number of hours that they have to do behind the wheel learning to drive. So I'm a Class C driver. I can't train big bus drivers. My head driver moved on to Eastchester Schools, where she's a supervisor there now. So right now, we don't have anybody in-house that is qualified to train our big bus drivers. So, we're working on it. Right. So the student ridership experience at the elementary schools, what we've done is we've hired additional sub chauffeurs, which the anticipation was that those staff would be able to ride on the elementary buses. But I am, dealing with staff shortages in my van drivers as well. I have people that are out on medical, I have people that retired, I have positions that we weren't able to fill. And so those subs that I hired, who also aren't licensed yet, have been riding vans where it's required as part of a student's IEP to have a monitor on board or a, co-chauffeur. So I'm, as much as I would like to put them on big buses that we were having issues with, I just don't have them. Okay, we're continuing to advertise for drivers. The shortage in drivers is not just a Hen HUD problem, it is a national school bus driver shortage. Okay, so the state is now allowing school districts to take on the responsibility, once you get certified, to be a third-party testing location. So, you know, you can go to different places in New York State and take your drivers and have them tested by another transportation supervisor. That is not something that I would like to do here, and it's a lot of liability for us, so I would not want to do that. But everybody's trying to work through this shortage. There's really no easy way to solve that problem. Okay, for next year, we want to hire at least, you know, one additional spare driver to have. So we have, you know, we used to have a guy that was a floater. So if somebody was out sick for a long period of time, we'd say, okay, you know, George, you're gonna cover for, you know, bus 74 for, you know, the next 3 weeks because he's out, he had hernia surgery. And then George would, instead of working whatever, he would come and work days and cover that guy's shift. We don't have that anymore. That was one of the positions that was eliminated years ago. But we're, you know, our hope is to, you know, get that position back in the next budget cycle. Okay. The other thing that we haven't done, and what I don't know, probably everybody hasn't recognized, is that the last kids that actually got a real kindergarten orientation are our third graders this year. Because of COVID, we have not done kindergarten orientation, so they didn't have the get on the bus, let's go for a ride, let's, you know, come back and have ice. They didn't do that, and everything's been virtual, and no one has had a real kindergarten orientation. I started a couple of years ago doing bus safety day, going into the schools, bringing the whole class, you know, the whole grade level out. It was, you know, September, so we were all out on the sidewalk, and everybody, you know, we talked about no bullying and, you know, using your inside voice on the bus, how to evacuate the bus in an emergency, how to use a two-way radio, how to use a seatbelt on the bus. And when COVID happened, we couldn't do it we didn't do it that year, and then the following year we didn't do it again. So what I've done now is I did contact all the building principals, and so the 23rd of January I started Frankie Lindsay School, or actually I started BV school, and the second and third graders there will get, you know, bus safety day. I'm going to go in, we'll do an inside presentation at first, and then everybody's going to have their jackets with them. We're going to go out to the bus. We're going to talk about what happens on the bus, how to evacuate the bus, you know, how to use a seatbelt, and, you know, how to use the two-way radio. We do bus safety drills, you know, 3 times a year with the students. That's required by SED law, but we need to make sure that everybody knows what their responsibilities are. So I did, you know, the other principals did schedule with me. So between now and the beginning of February, all of the elementary schools will be covered. We're finding now also that behaviorally, the 4th and 5th graders are doing much better. We haven't had, you know, as many bus conduct reports. We haven't had kids getting suspended from the bus, but, you know, so those things that everybody's getting into the groove, but it's still, you know, a work in progress. The K1 kids are also doing better. You know, for them, it's inexperience. They've never ridden on a bus before. You know, last year, even when school started, the kids that were first graders now were kindergartners. A lot of their parents drove them. And we still have parents that drive now. And, you know, so some parents don't want to, you know, open up their kids to the possibility of, you know, getting sick. And I get that. But, you know, it's the inexperience and the not knowing that was what was causing problems at the beginning of the year. So how do we fix this? So, you know, ideally we would put monitors on, you know, we would hire 17 monitors. You know, with the way that the CSEA contract is written, those monitors need to have their license. They need to be drivers. So that's a whole negotiation process that has to be done with CSEA. The cost to do that, to get us through to the end of this school year, should we do it, is about $97,700. And that's assuming that, you know, my step one is, you know, $28.74 an hour times 17 times 2 hours a day times 100 days. Okay. Long-term solution would be to purchase 4 additional buses. And I say long-term because right now the wait time for new equipment is, between 6 and 8 months. So when we do our budget, even our salespeople, our bus people are asking us now, like send a letter of intent saying that you want buses because I'm still waiting for the vans that we ordered in July 1st. And we haven't received them yet, and they don't know when we're gonna get them. Our 2 new big buses we got, and we got them right before the Christmas break. So those are just, those are in service now. With those 4 additional buses, I'd like to hire 4 additional drivers. And then next year it would be to hire 21 monitors. So this year it's 17, but next year it would be 21, because we'd have to make up for the 4 additional buses. And then I would be able to add another bus for at least 1 more bus to Furnace Woods in the afternoon and morning for arrival and dismissal, and then also to BV, 1 to BV and 1 to Frenchie Lindsay. Right now, what I did do at Frenchie and BV is I did add a bus to each of those schools, and I split the runs that go out to Furnace Woods, which is our furthest part of the district. So those kids basically get on a bus at Frenchie or BV, depending on which school they're attending, and they have express service out to Furnace Woods area in order to start being dropped, rather than going on a tour of the district to get home.
I have one just to clarify. So the cost of purchasing buses would be done through a bond, but the salaries for employees would be through the general fund. Correct? Thanks.
But they would work as custodian for the custodian, they would be custodians drivers, so they would drive, but they would also come into a building and work as well.
I have a question. Just going back over, I don't know why I wrote this down. Is that role that you were talking about with the training, is that what you call a lead driver? A head driver. Got it. And then my other question is, this is all these numbers are under the assumption that we would actually find 21 monitors. And right now we've found a few, but we can't use them because we need them in other roles. So the likelihood of
So they're
finding,
still, they're working as monitors, but not on big buses.
right, that's right. So the likelihood of finding 21 of these people is not great.
I ran ads and everything else, and I got 5. And out of 5, 3 of them work. 2 of them, I can't even get them in the building.
Okay, and then one other question, and I don't know if this is. And if this is not something that can be discussed here, you just tell me. But if we have a bus that's filled with K1 students and something happens to the driver, what happens? Who's calling for help?
Well, that's where your bus driver training goes in, and we train and that's part of the bus drill. So we teach the children how to use the radio. Well, all it is too is, the first person that calls, it says, my kid didn't get home yet, and I call on the radio and that driver doesn't answer. I can pull up, I have GPS, I can look and see, and that's part of that whole thing with the cameras from bus patrol is I can see where they are. I can see their bus. So, I know where they are. I know where to find them.
That's it for me.
So one question, would it be easier to get monitors if we didn't have that driver requirement from the CSEA? In other words, if they made a concession that,
Nobody wants to work, Corey.
so it's just
That nobody wants to work. It really is, and it's a sad fact. It really is a sad fact.
And it's not how much we pay, it's just nobody.
No, because we pay very well. We pay very well considering what other districts pay. Croton has people that just work as monitors, or they just work as attendants on the bus. And they make $18 an hour. We start our people at $28 an hour. So
But they can't work just as a monitor though.
they can't, they need to get their license.
Right, and what I'm saying is if they drop the requirement to get the license and we could just have them work as a monitor, would we get better response for monitors?
I don't know.
Okay. Is that a negotiation topic with the CSEA? Like, can you
We've
ask
already
them?
negotiated their contract, so it would have to be a whole nother separate side of
Sorry.
things.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So do you still have vacancies? How many vacancies do you currently have?
Right now, we have 4 custodial vacancies. And somebody just retired on the 9th of January, but I'm gonna fill that vacancy next week. But that means one of my subs is not gonna be a sub anymore, now he's gonna be a regular driver. So,
How many subs do you have?
6. And that's the thing, I could hire a lot of subs, because I'm only paying them when they work. So,
That was sort of the intent with the added,
correct,
but now you have them working full time,
they're working whenever I need them, they're working, yes.
but they're not working under the guidance of what we had originally thought. So they're actually fulfilling IEPs is what you're saying. So they're not working as bus monitors.
Well, not on big buses, correct.
So when you say hire 17 monitors this year and 21 next year, how do you envision that? Is it a bus monitor on every bus K through 5? Is that what you feel is necessary? When you've reached out to other districts?
Other districts don't have monitors. Peak still has monitors because they have a contractor, so that's why they have monitors. Croton has a bus monitor on a couple of their big buses that they transport special ed students on, for an inclusion thing. But a lot of districts don't have monitors.
Other Princeton Plan schools, do they have monitors? Do you know Peekskill is Princeton
Well, Peekskill does, Terrytown does, yeah,
on all their buses, K through 5, or just on the younger buses?
on all.
On all.
But Terrytown's also always had monitors, whether they were Princeton Plan or not, they always had monitors even before. And Peekskill's always had monitors because they're a contractor. And that's just, that's what that community felt most comfortable with.
But Austin also has a bus monitor.
And he's a contractor also.
That was the deal they made.
Yeah.
York County,
No,
they don't.
not on all of them, no. She has them on a few.
I don't know this, I should know this, maybe I shouldn't, I don't know. Do we have a board policy that sets capacity limits on buses? And
No, we do not.
we do not?
No, the capacity limit is what's allowed by law and what the seating capacity is on the vehicle. Traditionally, we've, with middle school and high school kids, we usually route between 50 and 55 kids on each bus.
Liz, can you go back to the slide with the drive times? Where it was, I think it was 25 to 30. This,
Yeah, that one.
adjust the average traveling speed for buses.
That's only in the routing program. It's not actually what the buses are traveling.
But why did we do that in the routing program then?
To see if it would make a difference as far as the to see if it would make a difference, if a ride if it would lessen the ride time.
Well, increasing the speed is definitely going to lessen the length of your ride. I'm just saying, is this what we're not driving 30 miles?
No, we're not.
So then
And
why?
sometimes we're not even doing 25 miles an hour.
Because we're
Laurel Hill, obviously, because that's where you live, you don't drive 25 miles an hour on Laurel Hill with a bus. You're probably doing 20, maybe you're doing 18, maybe even 15.
But is this what we use to tell parents how long their children would be on the buses? Because we definitely, I've driven by buses, thank God they don't go 30 miles per hour. But
It's just the mechanism to set up the routing program itself.
But parents were very concerned about how long their children would be on the buses.
Mhm.
And when it came out people wanted it for a very long time, they were told how long their children would be on the buses. So if you're using this to tell me how long my child's on the bus, it's going to be a shorter amount of time versus the actual time they're really on the bus. So I feel like this is not saying that you meant to do this, but why did we do this? Because this is misleading to parents.
Well, I'm wondering if this is why we had so many issues in the beginning. Did we ever, when the buses weren't showing up when they were supposed to, is that tied to this at all? In the beginning of the school year?
Well, yeah, of course, because we're not traveling at 30 miles an hour, we're traveling at, between 20 and 25 miles an hour, so it's gonna make the ride longer.
How are we not gonna have this happen next year?
I don't know, but how do we act surprised when parents showed up upset about their kid on a bus for an hour and have the ability to look them in the face and say, geez, I don't know why that's happening. Well, apparently, because think about this too, the bus goes up to 30, not in Peekskill, because the speed limit in the city of Peekskill is 25. But that's also the rate of speed of the bus. The bus doesn't go from 0 to 25 the second the doors are closed, right? They're not exactly accelerating at a high rate of speed, so they're gonna take a while to get to 25 miles an hour. And then they stop. So I can't even imagine, 25 sounds like a fairly aggressive number when you think about how a bus travels from stop A to stop B. I would highly doubt that they would even go 25 miles an hour if you were to take the average rate of speed from stop A to stop B. I find that hard to imagine when they're slowing down as they approach pretty drastically, because naturally they can't pound the brakes when they get to the stop, which also means they're going to take time to build up. I'm a little bit, I would like to have a longer discussion about this 25 to 30, who made the call, why we made the call. Is that what let us advertise to parents that there's going to be no bus time over 35 minutes? Because that's what we told people, and it didn't happen. 40 minutes. We didn't even get that done, and this is why. I feel like parents were kind of made to believe they were crazy, and that everybody's life was turned upside down as a result of this. And best practice, does anyone in Westchester use 30 miles an hour as their average rate of speed when they do their bus
The
program?
industry standard is 25 miles an hour.
So why did we use 30?
I asked the consultant that question, and when was it? Was 2019 when we were working with him on the concepts. I had asked with a couple caveats. One, well, I'll use these three bullets up front. Up top, no change in bell time, no additional buses, no ride time over 40 minutes. The no change in bell time was a result of we had tried to change the Furnace Woods bell time at one point in 2014 or 15, and for more efficient transportation model, and that was met with a lot of resistance. Obviously, no additional buses and no ride time over 40 minutes, because our longest ride in the non-Princeton plan was around 40 minutes. My question to the consultant was exactly that. I was the one who asked the question about miles per hour. That was my inquiry. That was not a directive, and we did not build a transportation routing system on 40 miles, 30 miles an hour. It's built on 25.
So then,
She's saying that we didn't tell parents, that we did put this in to figure it out.
It's my, well, then
Can I
correct me. We built a routing software and bus stops on 25 or 30 miles an hour, because my conversation with the consultant around 30 miles an hour was a while ago.
When we got the routes handed to us in July, they were at 25 miles an hour, and there were some routes that were like 47 and 51 minutes.
And the first set of, we published some draft routes back in the spring, right? Late
Right.
winter, about
Right.
a year ago,
Yeah,
and those were at 25.
right. And then when we talked with him, I think beginning of July, the routes were long, and so the discussion was had as to whether we would adjust the speed at which the buses were going to travel
so when we told
in
people,
the program.
40 miles an hour, 40-minute ride times, that was when we were using the 30-mile-an-hour number, because, is that correct? Okay, so we used talking points to sell a program that
How are we going to,
wasn't realistic.
how are we going to move forward? I mean, obviously, transportation is our biggest. We have 4 or 5 key main issues for parents and students right now that we've identified. Transportation seems to be the biggest. So we see the numbers, right? We are also seeing that the conclusion was this was not possible in the first place, which is Say anything, 'cause it's not gonna be nice. How are we gonna make sure this doesn't happen in September? I
That's
mean,
why-
you're gonna add, we have to approve 4 additional buses
Mhm,
at a cost of $800,000.
mhm.
With the hope we have monitors. The buses are gonna depreciate faster. Because we're riding more miles. And it's not gonna adjust does that solve the long ride time issues? Because like,
Yes, because I would add buses to every school, and so you're gonna reduce the number of kids on each bus.
so it won't be, because I think our goal is 35 to 40 minutes when we discussed Princeton plan originally. That was the map, like our max, because I think our max before was 40 minutes prior to this. Where are we, I guess what I'm gonna ask you, and you might not be able to answer this now, is what's our longest ride now for a student? And what's our average ride time across the district currently versus?
Actually, what's
last year?
our highest and what's our lowest? I think that's.
Yeah, highest and lowest, but and yeah, median, yes,
Sorry.
yes. That way we want to make sure that even if we add these 4 buses, before I think we move forward with adding any of this, we have to make sure that it's actually gonna solve the issue.
Well,
And I think that the other problem is too, is that, when I received the routes and I looked at the routes and I saw them. You know, we have kids getting on buses at BB school and even here at, at French and Lindsay, and they're going on a tour of the district to get home. So that's why, like I said to you, I put the kids, I took one bus to BB and one bus to French and Lindsay, and the kids that live out in the Furnace Woods area, I put those kids on a bus, like 2 separate buses, but they get expressed out there, so they're not stopping all through Montrose and Croton and Kruger's to get to Furnace. Now they're expressing out there. So now where their ride time was 47 minutes, I have one kid who lives at the top of Red Oak Lane. She was originally, it's gonna be 51 minutes for her. Now those kids are getting expressed out to that area and they're on the bus for 25 minutes, dropping kids off along the way, but in the Furnace Woods area.
Right.
So
I'd like to
to
also,
really do it, I think more efficiently would be, and I talked to my secretary about this, because Kathy does 99.9% of the routing for me, is why can't we just, centralize, we can regionalize the transportation. So if I have kids from BB school that are in Verplank and Buchanan or Verplank and Peekskill, put those kids on a bus and send. The kids in Verplank don't need to be on the bus with kids that live out in the woods and kids that live in Croton, and, let's, regionalize the transportation routes based on where the students live. And I think that that's a more efficient way to do it. You're still gonna get your state aid, because you have kids that live 1.5 miles from the school.
Wait, are you saying we routed things for state aid?
I'm not saying that.
I would like to know that answer very directly, and you can do an update at the next meeting, because I want to make certain that's not the case. The kids are not cattle, they're not a commodity, and I want to make sure that the
No,
routes are.
that was never,
Okay.
that was never.
It's distance from school, not distance traveled anyway, right? I think we cleared that up.
And that was never a discussion. That was, that was one of, and Joe can agree with this, that was one of the things that,
Yeah.
that the consultant had said was, oh, you're gonna have these kids on the bus, the kids are gonna, and you're gonna get, for every kid that's more than 1.5 miles away, that's more aid for the district. The district gets it, no matter what. The kids that live more than 1.5 miles from school, you get aid on them anyway, whether they're on the bus for 15 minutes or on the bus for.
So why wasn't it regionalized to begin with?
Right, it seems like it would have been the best case scenario because.
This was how the consultant put it together, so.
so,
Because if there were, it's gonna be fewer miles and less turnover, all of these.
But you need more buses for that. So it was to not buy the more buses, because we needed to the other right. So I have.
Correct.
My question, and I don't know if you have it now, ride time is one piece. But the other time is the time at the house, right? So I'd be curious, what time is the earliest pickup for a kid, and that kid, like the longest period of time someone's out of the house, kid's getting picked up at 8 a.m. and dropped off at 3:50, right? That's a really long day for a kindergartner.
I have Furnace Woods kids get up, that picked up, the earliest pickup is 7:35, and then they get dropped at school at 8:10.
But drop off at home. They get picked up at 7:35, so they're at the bus stop at 7:30. And Liz, I'm not asking for it now, but on our, maybe a follow-up for next
Well,
meeting.
I know what my guys do. So 7:35, and then the afternoon, that same kid that gets on at 7:35 is getting off the bus at 3:05. It's,
So
he
7
starts
and a
at
half hours.
2:35 and gets off the bus at 3:05.
So that's. Right, yeah, it's 7.5 hours.
Mhm.
And then how about for the younger kids, the BV and the Frank G kids? What would be the earliest pickup with the new model and the latest drop off for that same kid, student, child?
That one I have to look at. I know my furnace woods kids easier than I know.
I'd be curious. If it's 8 hours, I think that, you know, it could still be a 40-minute bus ride, but if we pick them up at 8 AM and don't drop them off until 10 to 4.
We definitely don't pick them up at 8 AM because I haven't dropped a furnace woods yet, so I don't start any BB Frank G kids don't get picked up before 8:20.
Okay, yeah, so when we talk about, I'd also like just time out of house. And then, can I ask some questions yet, or is anybody else not yet finished?
I think everybody has a question. I'm done.
Okay.
Yeah. You're good.
I'm listening.
800,000 additional expense to fix the busing. What, we're at $325,000 more now as well, right? So the existing busing cost us roughly $325 more. So that makes busing related to this grade banding model, instead of the $0 expense we talked about, a $1.1 million expense to the district above what we had when we were previously busing the kids. Because if we're spending 327 today, we're going to spend 803 or 325 today, 803 more, right? So we're talking $1.13 million additional expense to bus.
Well, that, can I just add that, that's for 1 year, because these are gonna be depreciated over a period of time, so
No,
this is just. This will be every year, you're gonna need to do this per year. This is per year, you're gonna have to hire 4 additional drivers every year and 21 monitors every year.
yeah, you have to pay them every year.
Okay, so pay, all right, so then the buses, you have to buy 4 more buses every year.
Maybe $1,000 per bus, you will pay them over 5 years.
So he's saying it per year.
So you're gonna have to buy 4 additional buses every
It's
year.
4 buses times 200
Wow.
grand. in one
Okay,
year. You know what I mean?
I just wanna make sure that
Not every
this
year.
is not a one-time bus.
4 buses.
These
I
4
think
buses,
we share them over 5 years.
right,
So if you want like 4 times 180.
that's my point, so 4/5, right? So you're gonna be depreciating those buses, you're not buying 4 additional buses every year, so let's take.
No, but
Yeah.
so what he's saying is you're gonna buy 4 buses. 193 is not the price of 4 buses.
That's the price of
That's
one
the
bus.
price, a little more than one
You're saying
bus.
493, 193 per year over the 5 years, so you're saying $1 million? For the 4 buses?
And then you got
300 times 5, right?
So I think, right, if I understand the math right, I think it's 180
Okay,
times 4, right? Because there's 4 buses at 180,000. And then depreciating that number over 5 years.
So
So-
every 5 years. we
so-
need to buy those
So 180
4
times
buses.
4 divided by 5, and then you would have to repeat, because after 5 years, that bus goes away.
oh, because you have residual value, I'm forgetting the residual value. 0 residual value?
I
Okay,
think
so
we
if it's
sell it,
193,
I think we sell it for, when we're lucky for what, 3,000?
so you're paying $1 million for 4 buses. That's 250,000 a bus.
No,
Right?
No,
no, 180.
no, 180 times 4 buses is $720,000, right?
Okay,
Divided by 5.
And then divide that by 5 years, and it's $144,000.
right, the math isn't working out for me.
Yeah, no, it should be 144, not 193 a year, right? If it's 180,
If you're saying it's 0 residual value, you multiply 193 times 5, which is just under $1 million, right?
I don't have. I have.
And we're buying 4 buses, so that would be just on, like around 240 is what you're saying per bus, that's, the number's not right.
So let me redo the math real fast here.
Yeah.
$180,000 per bus times 4 buses, right?
Okay.
180 times 4, 720,000. If we depreciate that, it's 144 a year, so that 703 becomes 753. So it'd be 750.
Plus,
Eight-
the cost, plus the cost of maintenance and everything.
Yeah.
So that's factored into that as
Yeah,
well.
okay, so you're adding maintenance. stuff.
Yeah.
So it's $1.1 million for grade banded busing.
Okay.
I have one last question. I didn't realize the buses were GPS enabled like that. I know other districts use an app to let parents know where their bus is on the route. Have we looked into that as a possible solution for parents?
We have, and honestly, I mean, I know that it's a convenience for parents, but it is a transportation nightmare. And all of my constituents who I've spoken to about it that have had it, absolutely don't recommend.
This is just a fault in it's just not, maybe in the future, the technology will be there. Is that what you're saying? It's just not there yet, or?
It increases the number of phone calls that come into transportation, and if the bus goes off the route, then it's, why is my kid's bus going in this direction? Why is my son's bus going across the Bear Mountain Bridge? Well, because your son isn't on that bus. Your son's bus is going on a trip and your son's on a sub bus, and now they don't have that sub bus, you know.
It seems, correct me if I'm wrong, Liz, but it
parameters,
seems
yeah.
to be really good for very large districts who might sub out their driver, they're contracting the buses to others.
If somebody calls and says, where's my kid's bus? I pick up the radio and say, 9-6, what's your location?
Okay.
And he says, oh, I'm at such and such Green Lawn Row, you know.
Okay, I'm glad that you looked into it. I just didn't know if that was an
Yeah,
option. Thank you.
I've looked into it a few times because it has come up at other meetings, you know, like even prior to, you know, to you guys being on the board and everything. And it's been something we've talked about for probably the past 10 years.
Jen. How many elementary school buses do we have in the morning and the afternoon?
13 in the morning and 15 in the afternoon.
Difference because
Difference because,
we split the routes.
yeah, I added, it would have been 13 and 13 in the morning, 13 in the afternoon, but then I added a bus to each of those.
Okay. And so the increase with 4 buses would be one in each elementary school plus middle school. Is that what you're saying? 4 added buses that you're.
So I think one of the long-term solutions also is that I'd like to put the 2 buses back at the middle school for morning and afternoon, which would then is going to require us to adjust bell times.
And so the regionalization that you spoke about, you could only do that with more buses, or you have been doing that now?
No, it hasn't been done yet.
Can you do it with the buses you have? Is that an option? Would that do anything? Or 1 bus or 2 buses? I'm just asking. Or you can only do it with 4. It's 4 the magic number.
I think that 4 is really ideally in order to, you know, give everybody the similar ride times. I think that that's really the best way to go.
Oh, Liz, would we be getting back, I'm sorry. Would we be getting back our experience in terms of bus stops, or would we still be having these big gang bus stops?
We still think we still would have to maintain gang stops.
Even with this additional expense?
Yeah.
I have a quick question. We talk about bell times. Would a later high school bell time help out? I mean, I have to bring this up, right? I think, you know.
No,
that-
later
that
bell
all
times
the
probably is more of a problem for me.
No, okay.
You kids are coming 7:25 to go to the tech center. How are they gonna get to school?
I'm just saying, there's a lot of science behind high school kids starting later.
Liz, there are 2 big enrollment swings we're expecting next year. Furnace Woods will be down 50 kids and BV will be up 30. If we look at today's numbers, does that mean anything for you, or that's not a big enough shift
You
to?
know, it doesn't, Joe, only because I would have to see like, where are we losing those 50 kids from? You know, because 50 kids really technically is a bus, but is it really because, you know, is it 50 kids all over the district, or is it 50 kids really from one, you know, a couple of locations? It really depends on where those 50 are coming from.
And we're adding, if we add 30 more BV, that may impact as well, but maybe not as much maybe not as
If I'm
much, because
able
they're
to
on the
add
same.
Yeah, if I'm able to add the bus, yeah, they're on the same bus, but if I'm able to add the buses for next year.
But and then also we could factor in that those kids are going to Blue Mountain, so it's just a wait,
We're
just
shifting.
shifting, right, so you'll have the need somewhere.
So where those 50 are gonna be.
Yeah, they're not leaving it this year, they're just.
So that's the other bus that doesn't, so that's why I said I'd like to put those 2 buses back at the middle school morning and afternoon next year. But that means that, the board's gonna have to look at bell times and make changes. For that to work.
And we have those buses, we just would need more drivers.
No, we have the drivers for them too.
Oh, you do?
For those particular buses, but in order to be able to, I need to hire drivers.
Which school do you need moved? Blue Mountain?
Well, right now, that was one of the things with the consultant was like, I can come into the middle school now and start dropping kids at 7:30. We used to come into the middle school and sit until
Yeah, because they
7:45.
don't have coverage until 7:45, right? In the building?
But she was able to get, I think that the principal was able to get, some of the aides that come in earlier, and get an extra 15 minutes every day to come in. And so that there's supervision in the building.
I'm sure there's a cost attached to that as well, I'm sure. Have we even, do we know that?
I think they're leaving 15 minutes earlier in the afternoon. They leave,
They
instead
leave
of-
earlier, okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't even know if you know, this is okay, you don't. Is there more parents driving this year and picking up?
Well, it's hard to tell because with COVID, everybody drove.
No,
There-
because
I know that we have parents that have kids at the UPK program, they're like, I'm gonna drive him, so I might as well drive my kids to the Frankie Lindsay anyways, so we do have those parents that are doing that. I don't think that we have, a huge amount of parents that are driving,
I'm just thinking if the parents that were driving decided now to take the bus.
they're still routed for us.
Okay,
Every student who's
Let's
registered
do
is
the
routed.
numbers for us. Remember you do your clicking and you showed us how many kids were the ridership compared to last year. It wasn't
Yeah.
significant from what I remember.
Yeah.
I think,
Yes, I remember.
right? We did that in November, December, something. Any other questions for Liz or anything? Right.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Thoughts. Right.
Yes, I'm gonna provide the board and the community with some data with regards to our grade banding and some scenarios if we were to not grade band next year. So we have published a lot of this data, some very, very publicly. It's all publicly available in one way or another, but we want to package it in a more concise way. So I'm going to walk through some of our demographics, some of our shifts over the last decade, and then talk about what a K-5 school system would look like based on some staffing and class size patterns. So our first one is our demographic enrollment data. This chart goes back 10 years. You really have to zoom in to look at it, but it identifies some significant shifts in our community. These categories along the top are categories that the state education department asks us to report on. In fact, we don't even report on them. The state education department goes in and takes this data from us. This is on Vets Day, which is a designated day in each early October, basic educational data system reporting day. So you'll see that we were a district of over 2,500 students 11 years ago. We're hovering around just under 2,200 now. You'll see the demographic makeup of our community. The most significant increases are with students who are Hispanic. We have more students, a 5% increase of students with disabilities, and our economically disadvantaged population has gone from 17 to 31%. So that's a district look. What we did was we broke it down over the last 5 years by school. So Buchanan for Plank, you'll see what their enrollment looked like, and I'll caveat this by saying that the absolute last row is current, their current enrollment. So the first 6 are in gray banded, and the last one is, or I'm sorry, the first 6 are in the traditional K-5 setting, and the last row is in gray banded model. So you'll see some big shifts between those last two rows. But BV historically around 300 students. You can see over time they got a little bit smaller. Economically disadvantaged held, if not some of those students, as that population shifted a little bit. ENL stayed pretty consistent, slight increase of students with disabilities, but you can read the chart. I don't need to read it for you. Frank G. Lindsay, same thing, started 2016-17 with just under 400 students, currently housing all of the K and 1, as well as 34 pre-K students. You'll see what their demographics are now. That data, just so you know, does not include pre-K for this purpose, but you'll see Frank G. Lindsay was growing, almost at 420 students, and you can see what their demographic shifts have been as well over that time. Then the last of the elementary schools is Furnace Woods. Furnace Woods has always, well, for the last number of years, hovered somewhere in the low to mid 200s. And then you see them this year with 365. So you can see their demographic shifts over time, even while they were K-5 elementary school, appreciable increase in students that were Hispanic, smaller population increase of students, economically disadvantaged students. And one of the reasons for the large spike of students with disabilities is we moved our ABC programs there for that 1 year. So that is sort of a district-wide program that is housed, and the data is pulled from Furnace Woods. So this last little chart in the bottom left is sort of where we are now with the grade banded model. So you'll see there's those data points are pretty close, with the exception of students with disabilities, but everyone is hovering around each other. Last year, it was around this time last year, the board at the time reduced the class caps in kindergarten. We have a Board of Education policy with some language around it that if classrooms in an elementary school break those numbers on the left, we have some decisions to make. The board reduced those class sizes last year. They wanted to ease into non-COVID instruction, and also ease into the grade banding model. So we changed the caps, which means we carried a few more elementary teachers this year than we had anticipated. And the K-5 staffing overview shows you what that is. So in our current policy, which was the lower class size, we currently have 46 K-5 teachers, and you see the average class size in those schools. The range in those average class sizes are around 2 to 3 students. So when you see an average of 22, well, that 22, I shouldn't have said that, it is at 22. But there is not a range of greater than 3 students. Had we gone to our class size or class cap size, that's where it says board policy, we would have needed 42 teachers, and you would have seen the average class size increase. So there's a appreciable increase in some. There's in fact no increase in 3rd grade or kindergarten. So then we build a school if it were this year and we did not adopt grade banding. So what we did is we took all of the students K-5 and we put them back into their home school as though they never left. And these enrollment class sizes are based on today's class caps. So you'll see at BV, you'll see an average class size all the way through by grade level, Frank G. and Furnace Woods. You'll see some pretty big discrepancies in some. One of the I guess frustrations that we had talked about, if you look at 3rd grade at Furnace Woods, our class cap is 24. I'm sorry, we have 24 students enrolled. And because the class cap is 20, we would need to split that section in half 12. So you get into some pretty significant variances when you look at this model and bring students out of the grade band and back. There was a question about the process if we didn't grade band or if we went back to K-5 and then redistricted. What you'll see is some, keep looking at this slide, some pretty significant enrollment variances. So DV would have 282, Frank G 422, and Furnace Woods, the smallest at 231. What redistricting often does is it moves students from one neighborhood school to another one, but it moves them by families, it doesn't move them by grade levels. So while redistricting can achieve a balance of total enrollment, it may not achieve desired results in terms of trying to smooth out big variances in class sizes. So the biggest variance in class size here is a difference of 7 kids in 3rd grade. Somehow we would need to redistrict in a way that would move some 3rd graders from Frank G to Furnace Woods if we want to try to smooth that out. The other big range is 4th grade from Frank G, where you would have some, or at least one class with 24 and Furnace Woods with 17. You would want to try to redistrict in a way that would permit moving some 4th graders from Frank G to Furnace Woods to try to smooth that out.
I don't want to move too far ahead. I just want to clarify while I'm looking at this. Where are the ICT students and ABC and 1211 mixed into these numbers?
This would include ICT sections. I'll let Lisa tell us where they would be. So it would be last year.
Are you asking where the numbers are
Like
or the
within this,
classes?
you know, Frank G is very high.
Right. So we would probably have left the classes, if we went back to this, we would have left the classes at Furnace Woods, where they were already
ABC would have
established.
stayed at Furnace Woods.
Yes,
And then within these numbers, where's ICT allocated?
ICT's in the numbers, they're included in our students.
You mean what school would they go?
Oh, what school?
Yeah, because, yes.
Oh, so I don't even know where we are. So last year kindergarten was in, it was in Furnace Woods. So this year, let's see, 1st grade would be Furnace Woods. That means 4th grade would be Furnace Woods.
I don't need you to.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
I'm trying to understand when this was put together, is this completely geographical? Or does this take into account what children were in ICT and where would they be if we went to community school?
No, it wasn't because some,
This is
remember,
just strictly geographical on this one.
this is geographic, right? Because remember, if students didn't move with ICT from a school, they're still in this other number. So they are not moved from their home
Yeah, so
school.
these are sort of artificial. Sort of.
So if there's no ICT factored in here.
No, there is ICT factored, but Eric is asking me like, would all these numbers be the same? They wouldn't be because some kids might not have taken ICT and moved into their home district based on the committee of special education recommendation.
So like the 86 at Frank G. Lindsay in 5th grade. I'm going to assume that's higher because it's ICT and that's where those kids are. Do you see what I'm saying? Am I making sense?
We did that.
Or if they were in ICT now, you
Yeah.
want to know, are they in ICT in this model?
Yes,
So if they're in ICT now, are they in ICT in this model?
I think Joe.
I can't answer that question because I didn't participate in these numbers. Joe and I would have to sit
We took
together.
that, we took student address. I'm looking at Carmen. She was the mechanic behind this. We took student numbers and put them in their home school, and we identified the ICT students, right? And we had a column for that. But the ICT students right now for this purpose are back in their home school.
That's what I'm asking.
And the reason
They may or may not move.
Okay.
they may or may not move, and the reason they may or may not move is because what Lisa was explaining is
Most kids do, but that's a misnomer in that most children, most of them, the majority do go to the school that they are recommended. I think it's a majority. There is a small group of parents that choose not to, but overwhelmingly, they do choose to go to the school that we recommend, right?
I can't. I would tell you right now, as of when we got back from COVID, the answer is not as overwhelming as we normally would have had.
Okay.
Because we were coming back from COVID. Not everybody wanted to move. They felt secure in their home district, their home building. So I would not have a number for you right now, but we can definitely have a conversation.
I just think that. Well, I saw the Frank G number and I was like, wow, that's a lot of kids. We've never, I mean, compared to the other two.
This year, fifth grade is our largest section. We have 3 sections of fifth grade ICT. So those are probably the right numbers, but I'm telling you that if that's the case, then I don't remember, I want to say they were in Frank G, so they were, so they are part of the right numbers.
Okay.
But here's what I'll tell you, that is our largest section right now, we have 3 of them. So when you think of those 3 sections, that is a big number. I mean, I don't know if it's a big number in your standards, but when I look at that number compared to all the other ones, then yes.
Joe, these numbers would change if you return to the old class caps, correct?
Yeah, that's the next one. So the next slide is, right, so the slide we just talked about was today's class caps, if everyone went back. This slide is if we went back to our board policy class caps. So you would see the distribution of students there. Based on class sections, we would need, what is it, instead of 53, we would need 49 teachers. So we would reduce 4 sections. Where you get a little nervous is a place like Furnace Woods in 4th grade. They would be a couple students away from splitting. You still see, even with the larger class caps or the policy class caps, you still see a really low 3rd grade at Furnace Woods. Furnace Woods kindergarten is always a crapshoot, but that would be close to splitting. You'd be close to splitting at Frank G. So a lot of things have to go right. 3rd grade at BV, you could split, and that is always one of the biggest headaches to try to plan for in the spring is who may show up. But anyway, based on current board policy class sizes, that's the distribution. So if we return to a K-5 model with the current class caps, comparing today's classroom experience versus if we went back, we would need 7 teachers, 7 classroom teachers. These are step 1, salary, benefits, health insurance. We would need to add back a music teacher. So there is salary, health insurance, benefits. We would add 1 special ed teacher, same thing. And so to add staff, we are in the neighborhood of 830,000. We would need 3 fewer teaching assistants based on the model. We have a calculation of how teaching assistants are assigned. We would reduce 3 teaching assistants. Those are the 3 least senior teaching assistants with their benefits identified. So 722 would be a staffing number. If we said, you know what, we're going to go back to where we were. We want to keep our class sizes low. We would build a staffing model based on that.
Is this the same staffing model though? We went back to the old class sizes? No, still.
No, this is just class caps. We can run a model if we went back to, so if you go back to the previous one with the at the board policy, so those yellow numbers would be that if we were went back to K-5 schools, we would need 49. The delta would still, or the difference would still be 7 based on the
No, if we went back to K-5, but you have board policy class sizes, you'd be talking about adding 3 teachers. So the first line, instead of it being add 7 classroom teachers for 650, it would be 3 at, do the math, whatever.
No.
Thank you.
it'd be 1. From 53 and 49.
So where
No, it's where we are.
46.
We're at 46 today. We go to.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're correct.
So it'd be a, so it'd
Where's
be
the
278.
UPA, where's the UPK teachers in there?
Not involved.
Not-
So they're not part of this number at all?
No.
We have them too.
We have them too.
So looking at we tried to look at an apples to apples model. What we got today, if we wanted to value those class sizes moving forward, we could adjust this for adding three teachers if we wanted to go back to the policy cap. And then we would run the model for teaching assistants as well.
So if that was the case, the only number that would change is adding 3 classroom teachers, but the music special ed teacher, those numbers are still the same.
Yeah, the music teacher would need to be added because the music model we have in the elementary is we have traveling teachers that teach instrumental music and teach orchestra. So one of our challenges over the last number of years was to limit the travel, because the more they travel during the day, the more time they are spending traveling and not teaching. So that, and in addition to additional music sections, which they have 2 days out of the 6 rotations. So if we wanted to revert back to our original class size policy, we can run a staffing model based on that. What this is showing today's experience in the classroom. If we use that same threshold for 3 K-5 schools.
Well, I have a little confusion on that, because we hired 17 TAs this year. And the explanation for that, when we did our Princeton plan presentation several months ago, was that the board had asked for some increased number of TAs to provide the same experience. So I would question the validity of the presentation with respect to the number of TAs that could be reduced as you use the word experience, because what I would say is that we should revert to the same building model that worked forever, that today's increased TA count is artificially inflated in an effort to provide said experience. So we can't count this experience with the increased TAs as a requirement to give yesterday's experience with same head count, because there was the ability to share those TAs with a mixture of age groups. I struggle a lot here with these numbers. So when we did this presentation and we look back, we have, including the 2 teachers that are involved because of UPK, right? We net reduced 5 gen ed staff. We did not replace 3 teachers who retired, 1 music, 2 elementary teachers, right? And then 2 teachers that would have been cut remained because the 2 teachers moved to the UPK program. So we net have 5 fewer gen ed teachers. Population is projected to I'm sorry.
That's because of the pre-K, you moved the 2.
Right, so but it would have been 5. If we didn't do UPK, we would have not had those 2 to make it 3. So we net 5 fewer elementary teachers are in the district today than last year. Population next year is projected to decline again.
Yeah.
We're stating that we need to add 7 teachers when we only net reduced a total of 5.
We're anticipating, just in case anyone's curious, kindergarten to be approximately 119 students.
And how much is it this year?
This kindergarten class was projected at 168. This is projected, this isn't actual.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
50 fewer
So,
kindergartners.
yeah.
So on top, so next year's projection is 50 fewer kindergarten students, just kindergarten, right? With a declining enrollment in general. We need to add 2 more teachers than we eliminated entirely, plus a music, plus a sped. So we net cut 5 and we now have to add 9. So we're going to almost 100% increase the number of teachers
Last year.
than we eliminated to revert to what we had. With all due respect, I'm going to ask that we could maybe revisit this presentation with a little more time and accuracy to reflect something that makes a little more sense based on enrollment. And while I appreciate the work and the effort that went into this, I'm entirely uncomfortable sitting and accepting that. And I will share, when we start to dig into many of these numbers, what we find is that these presentations have been liberal in their utilization of expectation, right? I think we've been very aggressive in what we hoped for. We said $0 busing expense. We didn't, you know what I'm saying? Like, without rehashing all of it, I can't buy this, and for the simple reasons that I stated.
These are, I want to make sure, these are today's enrollment numbers. This isn't a projection for next year.
But today is lower than last year, yes?
Today's enrollment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
K through 5 is fewer kids this year than last year.
It is.
So regardless of the 50 fewer kids next year, we're still indicating that we have to add 9 teachers when we only eliminated 5.
It's not a projection of what to add. These would be, if this staffing whatever chart you want to bring up, Greg, is if we were in the model today, we did not roll these students over to next year. We would roll those students over to next year, so graduate a big group of fifth graders, move everyone up or down, move everyone up a grade, and then estimate what we would need.
But I'm still struggling that we would have fewer kids this year than last year, and we would need almost double the number of teachers that were cut to make it work. Something doesn't just feel right, including on top of it, the number of TA staff being reduced by 3 when we added 17.
If you look at the sections, these would be today, if we put everyone back.
But we didn't move ICT. If we're gonna go back, then I think we should include what ICT, to Erica's point, looked like last year. We shouldn't take generalization on what their home school would be. We should just
ICT.
redo it based on what the ICT enrollment was last year and assume it to be similar.
It might be because the numbers here actually like line up, like 86% Frank G seems for the fifth grade seems exactly where we would have been at Frank G last year. So, and they were the ICT year. So that might be mixed in here. I'm not completely clear. I just want to point out one thing and then we'll need to rehash this over and over. I think we all have a lot of information in our heads. But the total staffing cost, if we go back, is approximately 722. We can dispute how many TAs and how much staff, and that can fluctuate one way or the other. Anywhere between maybe 350,000 if it's 3 teachers, plus the extra 2, or it's the worst case scenario of 7. It still costs more to fix the busing than the total staff. Am I reading that right, or
You're reading it right.
Correct.
okay?
And to
Almost
that point, if I would rather spend money on teachers and TAs than on buses. But I'm still, yeah,
So
We need to
can
work.
I just want to understand, let's give benefit of the doubt, and let's say these numbers are pretty close, right? 1.1 million for transportation to fix it. 722 to go back to the old way. So we're talking about the difference of almost $400,000 to keep what we have today. Right?
That's 1%.
Okay, that's 1% in tax, right? Based on what we heard from the teachers today, what we heard from Lisa before, that's a very compelling case for us to really think about. Are the benefits that we're just scratching the surface on worth $400,000, 1%, to see if it's, what's that?
Every year.
Every 1% every year, to see if we're going to get the benefits that the teachers today have talked to us about. Because I really want to give them a lot of due respect that they're the ones with the kids for a good chunk of the day, and they see how their experience is, what they're learning, what they're doing, taking care of the kids, and they're very positive about this new model.
Well,
So is
yeah,
it
but we
worth?
only- but we, in all due respect, 38 of them out of 100 or so answered the survey. So it might be more important to go back to the full staff and get their feedback for this. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a larger staff, 100, and then there's also untenured staff that also speak to, because they're not part of it. And then there's the middle school staff to speak to, right? So while I respect them and their opinions completely, I don't know that what we have of these 38 staff members is actually completely accurate. It's only 38 of over 100 staff members.
and I just,
Absolutely.
And it's not the
I'd
TAs
like to
either.
ask-
I just don't want to be
no,
hasty to make a decision when we're talking about
but
1% in tax.
I just
Right,
wanted
is
to
it worth
the point about the
Quick
survey.
decision.
I would like,
It's a lot more than, I have a feeling the delta is gonna be far greater, which,
If that's, like I said, benefit.
But I'm with you.
out
Yeah.
With this number, right? If the numbers come back and they're different, then it's a different discussion. It's not 1%, maybe it's a 2% discussion. Right? And then is it worth 2%? For, we need to balance out the needs of the students and the community, right? And the community being the parents and logistics, and we know transportation is an issue, but if we have the opportunity to fix this and we're getting a huge benefit from it, I just want to ask everybody to take some time and take a breath and not make a rash decision. And maybe give it some more time to realize these benefits, because even if we do that 1 year, let's say we just do it for 1 year and we do the 1% or 2% for 1 year, and then we realize after that year, it really hasn't come to fruition. Like, we've had a chance to fix everything, then we can still go back.
I know, but we also.
But we own the buses.
Well, we own the buses, but the buses are gonna get used. They're gonna get used, you know, they're just,
The rotation.
yeah, they'll last longer.
Yeah. And we also have some facilities issues to contend with and discuss as well.
We need to revisit this security issue, and
Which issue?
some of the door locking issue is also important.
Yeah, there's other things. We can bring them to our committees and then report.
Without a
back.
doubt.
When we talk about the survey, I would like to see more of a survey that is maybe paper. The way teachers vote for building reps, so anyone would feel comfortable filling it out. Only because I am a teacher and I am very hesitant about filling out surveys that attach my name or collect email addresses. Even when they don't attach my name or collect email addresses.
I think we need to discuss that, but I think we can also discuss doing it collaboratively, right?
Yeah, it's
Reaching not just HGA members, but reaching our fuller staff.
everyone, but I would like it to.
This is what I was speaking to 2 weeks ago, that there's large portions of our community that we haven't reached yet. And it's really important to get objective data, and so that while we're hesitant to spend more money on a third party to collect this information, does that allow us to reach more people and keep it objective so that they feel comfortable? I'm with Corey. I feel like we can't make a quick decision here. We need more data. And
Staff is, well, and that was the point. When you said that, I wasn't really even thinking staff. I'm thinking parent. I think we have a lot of parent. We got the parent issues. We got them. They're very clear. But if we want to get data on how this is working day to day, we have to reach more than 38 staff members. So
We might have to give them a little more time.
more time
to reach that, to reach their conclusions. Right? Like, we asked them in November.
That is what we talked
Which is,
about
I mean,
2 weeks
which is
ago.
fine,
but
it's a
nothing to
benchmark.
receive that information. We didn't finish it.
We probably should maybe have a conversation with them to see what a next benchmark would be and what
I just want to,
another option of reaching a fuller amount of staff would be. So it's not just HHEA, but it's all the staff in the district.
I also just want to say that, and I think I speak for the board when I say this, that in all of the efforts that we have made with the community, there has not been one concern over what's going on in the classrooms. The teachers are incredible. No matter what plan we are in, they are amazing, and our children are not suffering. They are learning, they are growing no matter what, because we have incredible teachers. So I think that a lot of the work that we've been doing is so focused on solving issues, and we're less concerned, not less concerned, because feedback from our teachers is so imperative, but we're less concerned because we know that these children are in great hands every day. So we have less that we need to know about what's going on in the classroom and how they're doing and what the teachers are doing and how they feel. And I think what we're doing is we're trying to solve community issues, and that's outside of the classroom, because what's going on in our classrooms is wonderful, no matter what model we're in. So, you know, a little bit of the focus of that, I think, has shifted because as board members, I have never heard anybody say that they're worried about that.
My only comment, I think I commented on it a couple of weeks ago. Over 33% of our population is Hispanic. Administration, besides me, has never done anything to reach. And I can tell you, I spoke with 7 families. It's not a lot, given that 33% should represent about 600. But the 7 families said that for them it's very difficult to come to the buildings and talk to the principals. It takes them a year and a half to get comfortable. By the time they are comfortable with the principal and the teachers, they have to move to another building with another principal and other teachers. Again, only 7 families I have spoken to, but the 7 families said
We need to do better. We do.
Enrique, do you have ideas on how the district could be better reaching out to these families. As an administrator, do you have suggestions on?
Okay, well, I suggested many times, it has never been a priority, but we can try. And what I can do is work with, because Marcelo and maybe any other Hispanic staff members that it's easy to reach at them, talk to them. For example, Maria Seno, who was a great teacher, who left because she felt that there was no support. She still works with Hispanic families in the library, so I can talk to her and see if she can help.
Right,
Now, last piece are some, we're asked for one-time, costs over the summer. We spent $28,000 for staff to unpack. A little over 9,000 in storage, units. Where, we, stored materials and supplies and then moved them. That's 37,000. We had added 32,000 to the budget, for, transportation. I believe that was tires and gas and some other things Liz had told me earlier. So, that would not be a recurring cost, obviously. We're going to, grade level banding, so that wouldn't be a cost, if we reverted. If we did revert, again, these, top two numbers are just estimates based on, what we spent last summer. So what we'll do is we'll look at a ICT model, for this. One question would be, do we want to look at current enrollment, or look at rolling over to next year to look at class sizes and staff allocation and the like? What we tried to do is to show today's kids in two different models. If you want us to look at what next year would look like, we have the numbers that we can roll over, it would be an estimate in terms of.
Joe, can I just throw something out about the last slide? Because the last slide, Greg, if you go back one, when you're talking about transportation, remember at this point, we are then going to be transporting kids within the district. So that's an added cost. If we go back to K-5, we're gonna have to go from building to building. Doesn't matter where they are, where we house, if they're not the home district and we need to put them in ICT and or the EBC, wherever we do it. So that needs to be added back in. It's not a savings.
Well, I think what we did on the transportation was just look at overall miles driven by the buses.
Right, but you're still going to be driving. I may be a student that lives in BV.
But this was deltas, so
Yeah.
so whatever last year's mileage was, the cost has only been based on the increased mileage of this year.
Right.
So last year we bused kids based on their support school, let's call it, or
Yeah,
their
makes
school
sense.
based on where the program is listed. This year, we just looked at how many additional miles are we driving?
Correct.
So that's the, right, so that's the delta on.
Right, but like Enrique said, you only did the big buses. So-
Right, we didn't add in the small buses we added this year, because
Okay.
they were already included from that
Perfect.
previous.
I just wanted to make sure that that was out there.
Thank you.
So that will be some direction. Do you want us to build a next year school based on enrollment rolling over? And based on if they stay grade banded or went to K-5 and what those, what class caps you'd like us to consider?
I think we should do both. Because I think that's gonna give us an intellectually honest approach to an apples for apples comparison this year. But this year doesn't equal last year, and I don't know what it's gonna look like in either model, and I think that it's important for us to determine what the model financially would look like when it's compared against itself today and when it's compared against itself on tomorrow's expectations.
I also, I know that we had sent other questions, Joe, that we were gonna come back to, and they were based on future programming and like Corey said, what we could achieve with this, because we still don't have a plan. We never really received a plan on what like, if this went well, and this was going well, and this is how we anticipated it to look, what would that look like? So
What could we add?
what could we add, what's, and then the expenses tied to that, because, the sky's the limit in some ways, but the sky was the limit before too, so
I think we need to fully understand that, and I think that was one of the questions that Ally had shared with you from the knots, right, at some point.
Look.
It was
okay,
one of my,
We'll discuss that as well. So we'll look at a 23-24 enrollment. We'll roll over enrollment in a current model, a K-5 model, and what would you like us to use for class size? Our current lower cap or go back to the board policy cap? Or both? See what it looks like.
I think you probably should go with policy and then you can always go back, see what it looks like and go in if you need to. I mean, you guys weigh in on that, just the initial thoughts.
right, because that gives you the larger number, right, we could then move back from, right? I would love to see maybe an ad hoc committee. I know with the strategic plan, we're working on shared decision making and communications, but I keep bringing it up because I think it's important. How are we going to further engage all of our stakeholders? So whether that's Enrique and meeting with some of his colleagues that maybe he's got ideas, Margaret and I talked about it in strategic planning meeting. Maybe there's a BOCES consultant that could give us some feedback as well. I would hesitate to say Ed Elements. I don't know if they've necessarily done a good job at meeting my expectations for engaging diverse of our. So, but what are the other options and how can we do this better? I don't know what this just some group of people to get together and start brainstorming.
I think that we all think that's a great idea and I think it's necessary and I think we all probably feel like we should have had one, but I think with the storm of information that we've been going through, it's been difficult to start, so that will sit on our list of initiatives for sure.
Sorry, I just wanted to be clear. We presented to the community that the only reason we were switching to this was for cost savings. And now we know that it's not going to give us cost savings. So now we're reaching out to the community to figure out how this could be better than what they had. And we're looking at now, what are the educational benefits? Like, I don't know, I just feel a little disingenuous up here because it was proposed one way and now we keep discussing it. And you have a lot of people that are upset with it. And we're reaching out to see if we have all the stakeholders and have all their feedback.
I know we probably, I mean, like Alexa said, this probably should have been established. I actually think it was part of the plan last year to establish a stakeholder committee here to follow this along. I just don't think it was ever done. So do we just abandon that idea completely?
I mean, on the January 20th, 21 meeting, you had 2 board members beg for surveying the community and they were shut down. And now we're going to be like, oh no, we should survey the community.
So I can't grow. I've been at this table for 2.5 years and I'm telling you that what I've learned in 2.5 years is that maybe we didn't do it right the first time.
No.
And I'm asking that we fix our past mistakes and figure out how to do it better moving forward. If we're gonna think about changing our policy again, I can't make the same mistakes twice. So I'm asking to do things better this time.
So, you know what, that actually makes me feel better because in being on that side of the table and hearing all of the data and not getting all of the correct data, like the transportation data, being over there, it was asked for time and time again. Things were foiled and they weren't given. Information was foiled and the information that was given doesn't match the information I'm on the board getting right now. So I'm not mad at that and I totally get learning. But I feel like I made a mistake at the last meeting when I said that the wedge in this community was Princeton plan. That is not the wedge in this community, has nothing to do with Princeton plan. The wedge in this community is distrust of the information that's presented. That's the wedge. So I made a mistake last week or 2 weeks ago too. But
Anybody have anything to add? Any questions, any follow-up requests? Right,
I think we're gonna get to like $1 million.
3 in savings. I just want to share that.
all right, now we're on to the start of. Well, I think last time we did a little bit, right, or no, official start of budget. Enrique, are you going to be presenting the initial budget presentation?
Good evening, everyone. Jeremy didn't know what was going on in the first page. But I've done it for every year since I've been here because showing the art of the students the same way that we just show on the great athletes is very important. Showing the art means and reminds us why we're here and why we have this project. The project is for the kids and for their education. So here we have a grade 6, Sofia Gonzalez. As you can imagine, I would never in many of my dreams would be able to draw anything like this. So that way I did. So if we go to the next page, please, the background, that's also from a grade 6. And I want to start with the background. The good news is that during the 21-22 school year, we ended up with a total of fund balance of over $24 million. This is way over what the state allows us to have. But we need to be fiscally responsible, and we're saving money because we have only another 5 years of cessation fund, and we're going to need to use these funds very strategically and very smartly, because if not, we're going to have problems down the road because of Indian Point. On the other hand, unfortunately, this year we had several unanticipated expenditures. We had 5 additional teachers at the cost of around $450,000. 17 additional teaching assistants at the cost of around $800,000. Then we had increase in utilities, as you can see in your own houses. NIPA is going up, oil is going up, gas and diesel are going up. Fortunately, they are starting to balance or starting to go down a little bit. We also had some increase in administrative cost of around $83,000, and that's on the building principal's accounts. Additional transportation cost for the monitors in buses that I'm expecting, if we get the monitors, to be around $100,000. And $3,000 off from the presentation that Liz just did, but it's approximately $100,000. Next. So I want to give a background on Indian Point. Like I mentioned last year, there were 2 pilots because Indian Point had 2 nuclear generating facilities. One shut down in April 2020, the other one in 21. And then in 21, at one point, Energy sold or transferred Indian Point assets to Holtec for the commissioning of the site. We had an agreement with Holtec where we get $4 million for the 2022-23 pilot school years, and then we can have an agreement for the next year. However, if there's no agreement, then what we will happen is that we will move well, hold like we move the property taxes to the roads. And the problem there is very simple for both them and us. For them is that very likely the valuation of the assessed value will be very high, and then they will go to file a tax resorry, and then I need to use that money. If I lose a tax resorry, then I have to make it up. So, at least from my standpoint, I like to know how much money, because we're talking very big money, I'm going to get the following year or the next year from a pilot, rather than from an assessment value that one day can be $12 million, but I lose in the tax resorry hearings, and it can go down to 6, and now I have to pay $6 million from every year that they were paying 12. So it's beneficial, I think, for both of us, but we're still negotiating. Next. So, as you can see here, pilot payments have decreased around 76%. However, the cessation fund payments have made up some of this money. For the 2023-24 year to the 2028-29, I'm assuming that Holtec will pay the same amount as 2022-2023, that was $4 million. So here you can see how the cessation fund helps, but at one point it goes from about $4-6 million to nothing. And then it's the taxpayers on their own. On this graph, you can see how our reserves have been growing, to cover the shortfall of the pilot. If you see the horizontal line is the maximum that we would be allowed to have in fund balance by law, by SED. As you can see, we're way above that number. Also on the governmental funds, total fund balance, they've been growing over the last several years, and all this is to make up for the payments that we lose from the pilot. Next one. Here you can see the revenues over time by type of sources. So as you can see, in 17-18, the biggest one was tax levy, and then that's going to increase substantially, while pilots will decrease substantially. So you can see there how one goes up and the other ones go down. And if you go to the next slide, you can see there exactly how it looks. You can see tax levy going up substantially and pilots going down, going the other direction. So here you can see the delta from one year to the other one of the revenues by source. Next. So why don't we start with the preliminary budget? And we are going to start with revenues and fund balance. So our revenue projection is a proposed tax levy of around $51.5 million. Our state aid that is increasing substantially of $12 million. Then we have other parts like cessation fund that it's going to be 12 million, pilot 6 million, and the rest are parts of, for example, other income that is increasing substantially for two reasons mainly. Reason number one is because interest income is going to go up substantially. Last year, bank was paying us about 20 basis points, and we have in average, I'll say about $5 to $6 million a day in average cash balances in the bank. So, and this year we're getting about 1.5% interest. So we're going to jump from $40,000 to $700,000-800,000. So it's a big jump. So here are the revenue assumptions. State aid increases by $4.1 million. And this is mainly because of our decreasing wealth ratio. What I just mentioned, increasing other income, also increasing tuition from outside students, and that will depend if Lisa can take more students or not, but even if she can, usually we increase the tuition about 2 to 3% per year. I'm taking into account additional sales tax of approximately $150,000. This might be a little bit too aggressive because obviously if we go into a recession, that might go the other direction. Applied fund balance. Like I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I want to have tax levy increase over the next 10 years between 3 and 4%. And the way that I can manage that 3 to 4% is by either the years that we get more money from some other sources, reduce the fund balance, and in the years that we get less, increase the fund balance. So that's why this year we're getting a lot more, $4 million more in state aid. Therefore, I can reduce the fund balance to $1.8 million. The pilots will increase a little bit to $6.4 million. I just want to remind everyone that we have more than the energy pilot or the Holtec pilot today. We have also the Bresco pilot. So those pilots increase every year by a couple of percentage points. So that's why I'm saying that pilots will increase slightly, even if I take into account that Holtec will pay us the same amount as last year. The cessation for fund payment will go down by $2 million because if you remember every year, it reduces by 10% of the difference. So the first year they pay us 80%, the second year 70%, and so on so far. So we go to expenditures. Our goal is to maintain all academic and support programs with 3 grade level in elementary schools. Again, the budget that we constructed is based on the principal. So if then we decide to switch it, then we would have to switch, reduce and increase like we discussed in the past 2 hours. We definitely will maintain pre-K. We need to add 1 additional special education teacher. We will have no recurring COVID expenditures. Again, due to the fact that there are increases in salaries, we expect approximately an increase in the teacher retirement system of $250,000. An increase in Social Security of $118,000, and the big one is an increase in health insurance expenditure by $800,000 or 6% of premium. On the other hand, we're having a reduction of around $80,000 in workers' comp. The good news about workers' comp is that we're in a consortium with all our Putnam, Northern Westchester, BOCES school districts. And our workers' comp fund is highly overfunded. So last year, we decided to give a dividend to all the schools, totaling $2 million. We didn't use any. And this year we decided to give an additional $2 million. Our proportional part is, if I'm not mistaken, around $120,000. But we didn't use it last year, and this year I'm using only about $78,000 in reduction. And then I'm taking into account additional bus runs to alleviate overcrowding and shorter routes. So next. So the budget to budget, and again, this is budget to budget. So what I budgeted last year compared to what I'm budgeting this year, the largest expenditures are salaries, $2.4 million, health insurance, like I said, 807,000, teacher retirement, 248, business contractual services, that's $181,000. And here is because we added an SRO after we had the budget. So the board came back to me and said, do you think that you can find money for the SRO? And I said, yes, but it was never in the budget. It's the same story for the superintendent contractual services. The board came back and said, can you find money for strategic planning after the fact? And we said, yes, we find the money. So I added in the contractual expenditure for the superintendent $103,000 for strategic planning. Workers' comp, like I said, goes down $78,000, and debt goes down close to $2.1 million. And this is an important number that we had a discussion in finance committee that probably the members will want to discuss after I finish my presentation. So if we go to the next one, by law, I need to present the budget in three parts: administrative, program, and capital. This is how it is. The administrative is an increase of 7.7%. But obviously, most of the increase is between the increase of the SRO and the strategic planning. The program is an increase of close to 5%. And the capital is an increase of 17.6%, and that's mainly because of the $2 million of rate that are coming off. So for our preliminary budget, I have a lower end of 88.1 million and a higher end of 88.5 compared to 86.6 of last year. So that's an increase of between 1.72 and 2.15 compared to last year. That will bring us a preliminary tax levy of between 51.1 and 51.5 compared to 50,000, or an increase of between 2.3 and 3%. Next, please. Here, we can see the trend, the proposed budget. Like I said, the non-property tax revenues are close to $37 million. The proposed budget is 88.4, which is the higher end. I prefer to give me some room to come down rather than to have to go up. $51 million in proposed tax levy. Obviously, the problem and the reason why we got a meeting with Senator Peter Hartman is because our tax cap will be reduced by 20%. So as it is, we are over the tax cap. And if we're over the tax cap and they don't change the legislature, we will have to have 66% of passing votes. So that's a discussion that we need to have. I hope that the community understands that the proposed tax levy of 3% is fiscally responsible, given the fact that we lost $20 million in pilot payments. Well, it will depend on the community. And the projections basically show the same. The projections show next year a proposed tax levy of 3.2 and the following year of 3.8, but with a tax cap way below that. So the problem is that every year between now and 2030, 31, if they don't change the law for us, we will have to go for the 66% override, which is very scary. The next one is on the lower side, but it's basically the same as the other one, but with the numbers of the lower side. But it shows the same problem even on the lower side. We will have our projections to be 66% of more on override because the way the tax cap formula is calculated. Thank you. Any comments? I'm sure that the finance committee is going to have some comments. Any questions before maybe? If there's any questions like that, then the finance committee can start the discussion with the $2 million.
I had a follow-up question about your meeting with Senator Harkam. How did it go? What's the outcome? Are we expecting any movement on the tax cap issue or?
Joe, why don't you tell them a little bit? You know him better, you have a better feeling of what he said. Thank you.
He's going to, he said he'd get back to us in 2 weeks. He's going to schedule a meeting with the education folks. These are the same folks that he hooked us up with last year to receive the extra $1 million in aid. So he's talking to the education folks so they understand that this school district, as a function of the dwindling power plant or dwindling pilot because of a power plant, is adversely affected by the tax cap, even though, as Enrique shared, we have made some very strategic short and long-term decisions that basically we played by the rules in response to a situation that was out of our control in Union Point closing. So they're going to make the argument to the education folks to see if the Department of Education, or at least the Office of School Finance, will go to the state controller's office to see if we can get a carve out. That can happen one or two ways. State controller can change the property tax cap law, which probably won't happen, or the legislation, Pete Harkin could write legislation as a carve out for the budget deliberations that would restore some aid or lower a tax cap or some combination of both. I had a conversation on Friday with Dana Levenberg. Dana Levenberg is the recently elected state assemblywoman. We had the same talk. She's going to speak with Pete Harkam and see if they can join forces, which I don't see why they wouldn't. I'm in the process of setting up a phone call for Enrique and I to speak with the New York State Superintendent's Council. We did that before, and we also are with the School Boards Association and some other groups. So we want to make sure that we have advocacy from different angles, but we expect, we met with Pete, last week? So another week, he said 2 weeks.
Okay, so hopefully it'll be, I'm just worried about timing. Obviously the budget calendar doesn't stop, but we're hopeful.
Sure.
Okay.
The good news is that in the last 2 budget votes, we were over the 66%. So, you know, yes, it's if we don't have any other recourse, it will be this vote and hoping that the community would understand that 3% compared to last year, that was a lot more than 3% the tax levy. They would say, you know, this can really affect our educational system.
Thank you.
I just have a general comment. I don't know if it's too big picture, but I would love for our board to, and I think Jen was on with me and Ally and Corey, when we had Town of Portland come, is there a way that we can try to push forward for more income? Like, what, I don't know of what our efforts are, you know, up until this point, but I think it would be great to meet with them again and really ask for their help in developing out this corner of town. There's lots of plans all over the town of Portland, just not in the Hendrick Hudson School District. And I would love to see income come to help us with some of this. So, you know, I don't know if this is the committee, or a separate discussion about amongst leadership or what we can do, but I would really love to try to work with the town to advocate for this corner of town.
They've come and presented, last couple of years, their business development consultant. He had said that they're trying to get, some new business in our school district. Most of it is through not-for-profit or town development. We talked a lot about different development outside of our school district, but we can reach back out to the, to their planner. He's a part-time person, and he can either provide a report to us or do a presentation. We know we're going to be busy this winter in budget presentations, but maybe there's a executive summary he could send us that what their plans are, at least what's
Yeah, I remember they had
Can I add a,
plans, but nothing for.
Yeah, I think the Montrose Matters group is working really hard too.
and I think there's a pretty important piece of this puzzle that is trying to find its way in for completion, and that is going to be an IMA with the town of, I pulled an education and used acronyms and what it meant, right? So, which is like an intermunicipal agreement, and I believe it is with, it's not solidified yet, but I believe that the Village of Buchanan and the town of Portland are working to do a cooperative effort utilizing some of the sewer treatment plant access that is currently owned and housed by Buchanan, and sharing that in a corridor in Montrose and potentially a corridor in Verplank. And the reason that that is important for this conversation is that that will, if it goes through, allow those areas to have a development that would be allow for greater utilization of the space compared to what it would be available if they were to be on septic. And that would increase the likelihood of some properties maybe being redeveloped, and that would be a benefit, I think, both to the town and to the school district. So I don't know where they are. I know that it is a conversation that is active, and that will help this cause tremendously.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions or comments on the?
I do.
Hey, can you do the final? For 2 million?
The 2 million.
Yes.
And I have a question too on the presentation.
So
We just wanted to make sure that it was clear, right? So we're seeing.
Slides in page 16.
Yeah. So the debt savings that we're seeing next year, the $2 million is essentially 4%, right? In the tax levy that we're basically not seeing because we're losing or gaining debt, I guess. So it's important that we're, you know, transparent, because ideally we would like to turn that into another capital project. That's the goal, to keep to keep upgrading. There's facilities work that need to be done within the schools, HVAC, plumbing. But anyways, I mean, more so, it's not really savings. So we really want to try to find true savings of that to get us down to where we want to be at this tax cap. You know, we want to keep it there. But so we want to be able to put that $2 million forward for a capital project, and also have $2 million in savings to pay the tax. So it's an effort we've been working on. We have some ideas. But yeah, I think we just wanted to be forthcoming, make sure everyone understood where the tax levy really is.
So basically what Jen is saying is that our budget will increase $1.8 million from last year to this year, but really it's increasing $3.8 million if we don't take into account the $2 million savings from debt. So the question is, should we use that money for operating budget or like Jen said, to fix our facilities? It's a discussion that the board has to do, because if the board decides to do a capital bond and make it neutral, these are the $2 million a year that will make it neutral. If we already use them for operating budget, they are gone. So,
If you save 2 million this year, you don't get to add it back next year, right? Now your new baseline is today -2, right?
yeah,
So, so if it's 3.8 million in total, then we're talking about 7% tax levy, 7 to 8%.
no. What? If you decide to keep the $2 million for future capital projects, then definitely, because you need to add, you know, 7%. That would have been a 7%. So we are 2.1 or whatever number we are, and sorry, let me see. A 2.1 because we reduce 4%. Or 4 to 5%.
But if we use this for something else, then we're talking about a 6%.
That's what I'm saying.
Finance committee has been talking about, well, how can we be more efficient? Where can we look to save money?
The same $2 million. That's a lot of money.
It's all.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
exactly, that was the point of the Princeton.
We were trying to save the money, it didn't work out. Admitting that,
Yeah.
right?
and-
How many times you want me to say it?
Why do we need another $100,000 for the strategic plan?
I was gonna ask about the strategic plan also, because I don't think we're, like, this budget doesn't take into consideration all the possibility, like, we don't have a line item in here that says strategic plan dreams.
No,
Like-
if you wait for the next presentation, it's a lot
Yeah,
clearer.
okay, I'm very patient,
Thank you.
For this, for my question too, for the next presentation or?
Yeah. But so. Remember, this is our first budget presentation, but I think it's going to be very important to the board to make some decisions pretty soon about those $2 million. You know, maybe you don't want the $2 million cut, but you want some other amount. Because if you get back to us in March and say, I want $2 million, we only have a week or 2 weeks to find them, and we're just going to have to cut, you know, the more time we have, the more we can think where can we cut without having.
we also have to consider that we have this BCS that we have, the building condition survey. And there are things within that we really have to fix, right? So we don't, just total transparency, we don't know what those are yet. We just know it's coming. So that may be part of that discussion, right? I mean,
What's the timeline on that? When are we gonna get a report out?
is that, we were gonna do it at the end when we did our facilities, but I mean, it's coming, right? I mean, wanna just give it now? That way we don't.
Yeah, I mean, we met last week with the architect and they gave us like a preliminary overview of where they thought they would have their targeted projects. I mean, a lot of them were just envelope, right? Site work, roofing, HVAC. You know, I would say the big architectural feature was really a media. That was kind of a fairly common theme throughout all the schools, was upgraded library areas that would really all children would be able to access, which was really, it was really great. And there were some bathroom upgrades. A lot of them we would make decisions based on Princeton, but a lot of them were, it didn't matter. We needed some gang bathrooms, whether we were gonna stay at Princeton or go K-5. Which was good and bad, because it kind of, it helps us, it's things that we need to do anyways. And so a lot of them didn't necessarily have to do with Princeton, but, so that'll be coming out soon in more detail, and we'll present it with the architect probably.
And some of it's gonna be had, well, I guess what we're asking, I think, Ally, was like, what's the timeline? So
Right.
like, if we have this $2 million, we have to decide, Enrique needs to know sooner than later. The finance committee has to discuss it, but we need to identify those items.
So I think tentatively,
There were,
there's two options, would be November of this year or May of next year. It would, either vote would probably not necessarily change an in-field start date.
Right.
Which would basically be the following summer. But so 25, so mind you, this summer is gonna be the BB cafeteria. That has, you know, we got $1 million, we have budgeted. That is out.
you
for
approved it today.
Right,
Yeah.
that is out, and we're gonna get bids back, and that's gonna move forward. The facilities would like to see something next summer to kind of keep this positive momentum going of upgrades to our facilities. It doesn't need to be $20 million or $5 million. We haven't actually carved it out, really put it on paper, but it's just how do we get, the next steps? But most likely a bigger one would be the end of this year, early next year, and we would have to, once we got the report, we would bring it to the board for discussion.
So can we use some of this money to do the more immediate need?
It's $2 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Without
kind
going
of-
to vote and.
Well, you will vote.
we still have to vote.
There's two reasons we want to vote. Number
The
one,
commu-
because
the
if you don't
community will-
vote,
the
you don't
community-
get stated.
Okay, got it.
And number two, you vote if you put it in the budget and you put it in the brochure and you announce it and you say, these $2 million are going for this capital project. When the budget passes, it's equal as if you had your separate capital proposition.
Understood.
So that's what I'm saying. When we talk about cutting $2 million, it's cutting $2 million from the operating budget, but keeping $2 million for capital project in the same budget. So the budget won't change. It's just where we allocate the $2 million.
Enrique, can you share, please? If we use the 2 million and line item the details so that it is approved from the community versus spent out of just the budget. Can you share what the state aid makes that equal to? Is that equal to like $2.8 million? Right, because we get state aid.
Yeah. So this year, our state aid ratio for capital projects is 15%.
50?
No, 15.
1.5.
1. Next year, it goes up to 32%. The following year, it should go even more, because remember, there's a 3-year lag in the wealth ratio calculation. So this 32% is only taking into account one of the 2 reactors that went off. Next year, it's going to take the other one. So the second time is not as high as the first one, but I assume that next year we're going to be up to 40 to 45% in that neighborhood.
So
So spending, go ahead.
whatever we can defer a year, that
That's
isn't
why,
immediate, will get us a lot more money.
that's why we haven't done the long-term bond on the $18.5 million. We're only paying interest. Because then this year, I'm only getting 15%, but only on the interest. Next year, when I get 32%, then I can say, okay, next year I'll start paying capital, because now my interest and capital will be at 32% stable. Okay.
That's right.
Yes.
And so with state aid, we have $2 million. That means that at 32%, we could spend 3 million, get $1 million in aid, and so we can do a $3 million project that will cost $2 million. Am I understanding the way this works, right?
Yes, exactly. The way we look at it is, I do a 20-year bond. So my yearly payments can be of $3 million. But the community will only pay 2.1. So that's why. So then I say, okay, the present value of 18 years of payments of $3 million is $40 million. That's the number that we can go for the BCS. That's how it works.
Great, thank you.
So it's getting late,
Yeah.
so let's go to administrative budget, and this should be very fast because it's little. So the administrative budget, if we go to, I'm faster than Greg, so. I want to go.
Greg's doing a great job.
Greg needs to talk.
Greg, why don't we go to the little by little, and now, as you can see, the administrative budget is the smallest part of our budget. It's only 6.4%, program is 83%, and then capital is 10%. Our administrative budget is divided in 4 parts. The most important one is what we call general support, that it's you guys, the board. Central administration and curriculum and development and central services. So why don't we go to general support? General support is the money that we set aside for the Board of Education. That's everything that we pay, including paying Greg for board meeting, if you guys need to go for training, anything like that. This year we increased a little bit, a lot, I would say, but it's because in the past, Greg's salary came from technology. That's because Laura was the one that hired Greg, so I said, Laura, you hire, you pay. But no, it should be here, so that's why the increase.
One question, are custodial services for these meetings?
No, the custodians are here no matter what.
Okay.
So it's part of their job. So no, this is basically Greg and anything that you guys need, like for training or anything like that. And then we have district clerk, which is the salary as district clerk of Carmen, and then everything that we pay for the budget board meetings.
Part of her. That's not her only job, right? So
No, it's
part of her. Thank you.
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So you know, Carmen's salary as a district clerk is $5,000. So pretty low for her being here until 10:30 at night, some nights. But that's what it is. So the total increase is 10% or $3,000, $3,500. Next. The next one is central administration, and it starts with the office of the superintendent. The numbers at the top that says 212 are the FTEs, full-time equivalents. So that's Carmen and Joe as their salaries. And that includes salaries, supplies, equipment, everything that they need. And again, the increase is 110,000, from which 105 is in, I don't remember if it was 100 or 105, the increase on the strategic plan. But that's why it's such a high number. Business administration is the business office. That's 5 people in my office. The increase is 197,000. That's not the increase for me, believe me. The increase of $177,000 is the SRO that comes out of my contractual payment. And then we have the treasurer, auditor, tax. We have one treasurer, our internal and external auditors, then we pay the city of Peekskill about $30,000 for them to collect our taxes for the portion of our people that work in that live in Peekskill. So this will be an increase of 20%, but if you take into account that basically 277,000 out of the 318 are the strategic planning and the SRO, the rest is very little.
Yes, my interest here. So we pay Peekskill $30,000. How much tax revenue do we get from Peekskill that they're charging us $30,000 in administrative fees?
It's about 8% of the $50 million.
What?
About 8, and I'll give you the exact number next time, but it's about 8% of the, so 92%.
What do you do for $30,000? Like, do they do something special, or do they write us?
No,
They get the same tax bill for everybody, right?
No,
Or they know how to tax bill?
remember that we have 2 jurisdictions.
Yeah.
Completely different. The city of Peekskill that is in our school district and the town of Portland. Town of Portland does it for free as part of our give and take. City of Peekskill has never done it for free. City of Peekskill has always charged, and they charge us an amount per $1,000. And I can give you the number next time, but it's close to $30,000.
It's about $30,000 we should be saving.
I think that we talked about this one time. There's a whole like system that you.
Oh, yeah, no,
That we
sorry.
don't.
If they have the assessor, then they have the system.
They have a separate system to collect our taxes. Don't they put it as a line item?
No, that's why I told you. Remember, every year, we have 2 jurisdictions where we have, on the one hand, town of Portland, on the other hand, city of Peekskill. That's why, if you remember, in June, we approved the taxes for city of Peekskill because cities pay taxes in July, towns pay taxes in September. You pay, and I pay taxes in September. If you live in city of Peekskill, you pay them in July. That's why we have 2 completely different, and that's why every year, either town of Portland residents or city of Peekskill or the other way around, because in June, I need to try to estimate, and I talked to town of Portland, what's going to be the tax rate in town of Portland even before we have done it.
I just don't understand what they do for $30,000. Do they buy us a separate computer system? Do they send out bills?
Yeah.
Do
They sent out
But
the
they send
bill.
out bills that they would send out with their regular
No,
tax
because
bill anyway.
they have a separate system for us, because we have a separate tax rate on the Peekskill school district.
But a
See,
separate system, a whole separate.
Well, I
computer
don't know.
system?
I don't ask them.
But I think it's a separate
exactly.
cycle, right? 'Cause I
Yeah,
have
but it's
a-
a separate cycle, but
It's a
how much?
separate-
No, it's the same cycle. The cycle is the same, because
It just seems like a lot.
if you are a Peekskill resident in Peekskill School District or in the Henry Hudson School District, you receive your tax bill the same day. So the cycle is the same.
Yeah.
The issue is that the rates are completely different because we are a different school
So
district.
I call for that,
I know, but I'm
Get
not
a
going
picture
to.
right?
First of all, I would need to buy a whole machine to do it.
Maybe we can reach out to them.
Yeah.
Maybe let's put it on the list of things.
Oh,
we should do.
of course, believe me, I reach out to them every year, asking them, come on, guys. And they said, well, you know, it's like, we need to pay this and that, but yeah, and believe me, after what happened with the $12 million, the last thing they want to hear from Henry Hudson is, don't come and cry here, you took $12 million from us. They still, that happened over 10 years ago. They still remind me every time that I go there, believe me.
You guys know what that is?
Yes, we have that later. Really late.
So,
Okay.
yeah, it's late, but. So where are we? So central administration, so it's a 20%, like I said, but out of that 20%, increase or 318, like 280,000 is because strategic planning and our SRO. Central services are legal costs. The payments that we pay Keenan Bean and our other lawyers. Then we have the personnel department. That's two people. That's Margaret and her secretary. That's about 2% increase, 1.6. Then we have $23,000, the cost to run the district public relations. Then insurance, student insurance. This is only for student accident insurance. Then we will discuss in another time the insurance for you, for the district, for everything. This is only student accident insurance. And then the BOCES administrative fees. We are one of 18 component districts from BOCES, and this is divided in several parts. One of them is BOCES did a capital project about 10 years ago that every single district voted, and it's our proportional part from that capital project. And then the administrative fees from BOCES. So this is an increase of 3.2%. And then we have the biggest part, which is the Office of the Executive Director, and this is the portion of Margaret, that is curriculum and instruction. Then we have curriculum and professional development. And then we have the biggest part, that is the school business administration. That's all the principals, assistant principals, their secretaries, their equipment, everything that they need in their offices. This does not take into account Lisa and her team, because that goes in special ed. So I carve out special ed from here, and that's an increase of 1.8%. So the next one is just a summary of everything. So the increase is $404,000, which again, 277,000 are from strategic planning and the SRO. So not $123,000, $127,000 basically increase out of a budget of $5 million. That's why I said this is simple and easy. Are there any questions?
Questions? Thank you so much, Enrique. Oh,
No, I'm good.
we won't get mad.
No, good.
Except for Ally. She's admitting it. Thank you, Enrique. Thank you. Okay. Do we have anyone signed up for audience comments on agenda items?
Amelia Silverman?
Hi, my name is Melia Silverman and I'm a community member. I'm a mom of 4 in the district. I just wanted to remind you guys not to be rash and not to be selfish when you guys are making any decisions in the future. There's quite a few of us who have not been speaking up due to fear of people judging us or lashing out. I don't feel like this has ever been a community-based school. I was never in a community-based school. I live closest to Furnace Woods and my son was bused to BV. So when I hear people complaining about bus times now, I find it a little bit, I can't feel bad for those people because I was living it for so long and nobody wanted to hear me out before or change it. And class sizes, equity. We need to make sure that everything that we're doing is about the entire community. We can't just think about your child. We need to think about everyone. So if you do decide to go back to another model, are we going back to the way it was? Or are you guys gonna look at the whole picture and make everyone happy? And I would hope that you guys would, again, just consider everybody, not just your own children. But remember, you guys are representing the entire community and there's a lot of us who are pro Princeton plan. And if you do decide to change it, please take us into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
My next speaker is Elisa Anderson. I just wanted to answer the concern that was voiced about the lack of anonymity anonymousness in our survey. It was anonymous, and I did share the questions when I was asked for that. And the first question was, share your name if you are comfortable. It was not mandatory, and our HHCA members are very comfortable with Google Forms. That's how we get information from them so that we can represent them. I wanted to thank you, Corey, for acknowledging the value of the judgment of the professional staff to inform decision-making. And as the teachers who have been here for many, many, many years have discussed over the years, the change to grade banding has always been about equity. And I did hear discussions about equity when the board was discussing it for the past 3 years. And as I said in my communications with all of you, I am happy to discuss this with any of you at your convenience. And I have many HHCA members who would be very happy to join me and have conversations with you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah. Great. Committee reports. Everyone.
So I have one more.
Yeah.
I was busy.
So I went to a Westbrook community whatever meeting. But the topic was conversations regarding DEI and around DEI. It was great information. So I got some names of an instructor who would, provide professional development for staff. We talked about different positives and negatives and how people rolled out DEI, where other communities are. And my feeling is we are behind. So it is really something, I know it's a high priority of strategic plan, but I just think we should all keep that in our minds. We are well behind from where we need to be. But I did send all that information to our strategic plan DEI community member who's heading that up. So hopefully some of it they will roll out. One thing for staff though is there's, I guess, the river towns in general. So specifically Irvington, Dobbs Ferry. I guess they have like a career fair. Based about how to get more diverse staff. I don't know, is that something that we could look into? Yeah, it seems to be working. Oh yeah, I'll send you the information, but it does seem to be working and there was some positives out of it. So I know I believe that is something that has come back from our staff to see it, more diverse, more diversity. We already gave finance, we already gave everything up, right?
We have a couple, which one? Yeah, sure. So bus patrol, they're presenting here next meeting. And there was a couple of articles. Joe spoke with News 12, Alexis and I spoke with the Examiner, and they are getting some publicity out ahead of this conversation that we're gonna have at our next meeting. To that end, Richard Becker, who is with Town of Portland, he is a supervisor of Town of Portland. He reached out and offered and this is a question for the board. He reached out and asked if we would like the support of the town as we continue to work with the Westchester County government for some of these efforts. So he offered to pass a resolution of support and also to contact the 2 county legislators that cover our area. Of course, he's not asking to interfere in any way, but rather found that, if we would like to have their support, he would love to put it behind us, which I said I can't answer for the board, but I would love your support. So I'll be sure to ask the board at our next meeting. And I also asked if they would like to come next week to learn more about our next meeting, to learn more about bus patrol. We'd love to have them. So I guess as a straw poll, are we all okay with me responding and asking the town to support us in this effort to get questions?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Definitely.
Great. So were we gonna touch on the 2 developments that's been a conversation? One was the PA system in the high school. I understand that that's going to have been maybe completed quicker than initially expected, and it sounds like we may be in a number of days for completion as opposed to weeks or months. So I think that was something that was meaningful and worthwhile to share. And then also, and I'm going to ask Jonah not to put you on the spot, but we chatted about it a bit on an email. Can you share some of the progress? I think we've discussed it, right, about the Narcan and forthcoming. So I just I think we said that was happening, so I'm sorry if I'm asking you out of turn. I thought you said you were going to mention.
Yeah, so there are a couple mechanisms for us to consider to have Narcan in the schools by school personnel, not a school resource officer. One mechanism is for school nurses to have access to Narcan, and that is in conjunction and collaboration with our school physician. That's called a standing order, where a school physician basically writes a script for school nurses to have access to Narcan. They would be stored in the school nurse station, and only school nurses under the law as it stands. Under the laws that stands under the standing order can administer Narcan, so can school resource officers. There's a training that's part of that. In fact, our nurses took the training today, this afternoon. It's online training, and they signed up and did that. The school physician, our lead nurse, is working with the school physician on that standing order. So once we receive that, we'll be able to make sure and assure our families that we have Narcan in our schools for emergencies. The next phase, if we choose to go that route, would be a policy of the Board of Education that would permit training of additional school staff for us to permit them to administer Narcan based on our policy. So we're getting the standing order done first. Policy committee has narrowed down the meeting, I think the 24th or 26th. And we'll be reviewing other school district policies that are recommended to us from our legal team. And then what our deliberations will be as a board is who would we want to have trained that could deliver, that could use the Narcan, coaches, security personnel, administrators, athletic trainer, making it up, but there's a litany of folks that we could put through the training if they feel comfortable, and that they also could be deputized, for lack of a better term, to administer. So we have an immediate fix, which started with the training today in the standing order, and then a policy for the board to talk about what our vision is and who should be trained and have access.
And then I got a call today as I was walking into the meeting, and I understand, I don't know the details, so we'll have to ask one of our team that works on that BOCES may have announced a training that's free for any staff member in the district who wants to take Narcan training, which I thought was great, because even if the policy that we write restricts it, it doesn't restrict them from taking the free training. And when they complete the training, the person gets Narcan also supplied to them for free.
I think Town Court has offered similar free trainings.
They are.
Yeah.
So it sounds to me like that'd be a great thing to take advantage of, because I'd rather have more people trained in a policy that restricts utilization as opposed to a broad policy and there's nobody who has access, or we have to pay for it if it's being offered for free now. I don't know the dissemination of information internally, but you know.
Yeah,
it would be a great
and I don't know the training, I don't know who provided the training our nurses did today, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was BOCES. And it would surprise me if it was free, but we can.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Good, new business, anything? Everyone ready for bed? All right, can I have a motion to close the meeting? Have a second?